Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece Fates Intertwined by Demonheart 12. What if the time difference between Luffy and Robin was much smaller? What would happen if he arrived on her island somehow before the Buster Call happened? How will their presence in each other's lives affect each other? Follow their adventures as they grow together and sail the seas in hopes of achieving their dreams. I don't own anything. Adios.
To the Grand Line. Luffy and the crew kept sailing toward the Grand Line after their small skirmish with the Marines at Luge Town. On their journey, they accidentally entered the Calm Belt, a place where the ocean tides are silent. They were bounced from one place to the other by sea kings that made Momoa look like a small fish. After that, they met a small girl by the name of APIs who told them that she wanted to go to her home. The Straw Hats took her there only to enter a weird adventure where they had to save the girl's dragon friend from being killed so a corrupt marine can eat him. Finally, once they were finished, they continued sailing to the Grand Line in hopes of achieving their dreams. Currently, Luffy was hopping up and down on the rails of the ship as he observed the entrance of the Grand Line come closer and closer. It was called the Reverse Mountain, a path that ship uses to enter the Grand Line to sail through it. Luffy chuckled happily. I can't believe it. We finally made it to the entrance. We're one step closer to our dreams. The boy hopped onto Mary's ship head. He then noticed that the light from the lighthouse at the entrance of the Grand Line went out, causing him to panic. Nami, what happened? Where did the light go? And isn't that the guiding light that everyone uses to enter the Grand Line? Nami, who wearing a jacket to protect her from the rain, walked onto the deck sighing. Well, it's to be expected given that the lighthouse is the only one here at the entrance of the Grand Line. She looked up and smiled to herself. Besides, I'm the navigator, so in times like these I shine. So calm down. I know what I'm doing. The girl then walked away to grab a compass. Luffy now hugged the head of the ship saying, wow, you're really amazing, Nami. You're the best navigator anyone can ask for. The girl stopped and smiled a little as she looked back and lost her color. She ran and grabbed Luffy, slamming him into the deck in front of her. The boy groaned as Nami yelled at him, you idiot, don't you have a sense of self-preservation? If it got slippery enough, you would have died when you fell into the sea. Don't ever go up there again with a weather like that. She turned before turning back, adding, got it? The boy nodded, yeah, as long as you don't take my spot. He was punched on the head as Nami walked away, mumbling about never showing interest in his so-called spot. The boy rubbed his head as Robin stood above him with a very unimpressed look. Hey, Robin, how's your day? The girl frowned as she clenched her fist and gently smacked him on the head. She shook her head and said, please be careful, Luffy. The weather is bad, and you can fall if it becomes slippery enough, and I don't want that. The boy replied with 2 thumbs up. Nami was talking to herself about the rumors being true. She then yelled, everyone, come inside to talk about the Grand Line. Luffy and Robin then entered the kitchen where Nami followed them. The girl then slammed the map of the Grand Line. Listen, guys, the entrance to the Grand Line is a mountain. Everyone except Luffy and Robin was shocked as Usopp's jaw dropped to the ground with the boy asked out loud, what? A mountain? How does that work? The girl sighed, look, I know that's something that it's hard to believe. I didn't believe it myself at first, but when I looked at the map and then the lighthouse, they all pointed to Reverse Mountain, which is located right on the red line. Usopp then looked at Luffy and Robin. Did you two know about this? They both nodded. Usopp screamed, why didn't you tell us? We could have found a way instead of crashing into a goddamn mountain. The boy was silenced by a disembodied hand flicking his nose, making him squeak in fear. Nami silently thanked Robin as she carried on. No, we won't crash into a mountain. There's a waterway according to the map, she said as she placed a finger on the map showing the entrance. This didn't help Usopp at all. If anything, it made him even more nervous. The boy asked, how do we use the waterway anyway? How does a ship even go up a mountain? Is that even possible to begin with? Because all this sounds crazy? Robin replied, crazy or not, it's our only way there. Plus, who doesn't want a life-threatening adventure every once in a while? This made Usopp slam his head back into the ground as he protested her words, saying that he wasn't insane like her and Luffy. Sanji slammed his foot on Usopp's head for yelling at Robin before adding, I believe it. It's not the first time I see ships go upside a mountain. This little comment went ignored. Zoro wondered, can't we use something else? I mean, can't we go south? We'd still enter the Grand Line. Plus, we'd avoid the risk of becoming dead. Luffy appeared beside him, protesting as Nami yelled, did you forget what happened to us last time? The man tilted his head as he wondered what she was talking about before remembering what she meant and shivered. Usopp's voice shook, guys, the storm is gone. Everyone stood up with pale faces as they went out. Robin and Nami slumped into depression. We're stuck into the clam belt once again. Suddenly, the entire ship shook as the ship raised into the air. The men at this point had faces of pure horror as Nami and Robin clung to the mast of the ship with Robin saying, "At least, this way I can say that I died a very interesting death, and not just on the bed." Luffy then looked down and gasped in fear. The ship is on the head of a huge sea king. This made Nami's soul leave her mouth. The girl began to wonder if this was going to be her end. Luffy then noticed the sea king beginning to sneeze, and said, "Brace yourselves." He then tied everyone to the mast as Sanji yelled, "I don't want to die hugging you. Get off me, you shitty gum." He didn't get to finish that as the sneeze blasted them from the clam belt to Reverse Mountain in one go. Nami then slid down as she asked with fear in her voice as the rain hit her face, "Is the nightmare over? Please tell me that it's over. My soul can't take it anymore." Robin smiled, "I believe so, since if we were still there we'd be either smashed into million pieces by huge sea kings, or boiling in the stomach acid of a hungry beast." This made both Nami and Usopp shiver as the orange-haired girl yelled, "Stop giving me such vivid nightmares. I want to sleep." She shook her head and asked, "Now, does anyone want to use any alternative route?" Zoro shook his head as Usopp said, "I'll go up the mountain. I'll go up the mountain. I don't want to die in the stomach of sea kings." Sanji looked at him and sighed. Nami then sat and explained what was going to happen. She explained that Reverse Mountain has waterways from all seas. Each waterway has a strong current that drives a ship up the waterway. At the top, all currents will merge together and take the ship to the Grand Line. The girl rubbed her head. Reverse Mountain is a winter island, so the currents on the edges go to the bottom of the sea. Luffy cut her off, "So we have one chance, and if we mess up, we'd end at the bottom of the sea." Nami looked at him for a moment before shaking her shock and nodding her head. Zoro sighed, "A ship going upside a mountain. I find this hard to believe, but I guess there's no other choice we have." Sanji, who was standing beside him, shook his head. The blonde man took a gulp of his cigarette and let out some smoke. "Well, this is the Grand Line. It is told that a lot of things that defy the rules of physics exist there, so this seems ordinary if you ask me." Zoro eyed him as he added, "That's assuming that we make it in the first place. It is said that half of the people who try to enter the Grand Line end up dead." Luffy yelled, "Look at that. It's the magic mountain that Ms. Olivia taught me about." Robin smiled fondly, remembering how her mother tried to simplify things as much as possible so that Luffy would understand them. Nami, on the other hand, felt a bit insulted that he called it a magic mountain, considering how he can understand somewhat. On the other hand, trembled. Is that it? It seems so scary. In front of them was a huge rock wall that extended for miles into the sky, so much that you couldn't see its top due to the clouds. Everyone was in shock, but Luffy yelled, "Usopp, Sanji, go hold the rudder so we don't end up as fish food today." The duo didn't need to be told further as they raced inside the kitchen, and caught the rudder beginning to stare at. Nami stood shocked at the majestic sight as Zoro used the binoculars to locate the entrance of the mountain. He mouthed out, "I can't believe this. There's an actual waterway all up the mountain." He saw through the binoculars a waterway which its entrance was covered by huge square arcs. "The entrance is here. The ocean water is really going up the mountain." Robin brought out a small notebook and began to sketch Reverse Mountain. "I can't believe this. This place is so beautiful. No wonder my mom went out on a voyage." Nami from the side sweat dropped as she wondered if this was the right time to take a sketch of the mountain. Luffy noticed that the ship was slowly veering off course. "Guys, be careful, the ship is moving off course. We're about to smash into the mountain." The two men in the kitchen grabbed the steering wheel and tried to turn it around. Robin added some hands to help them, but a snap was heard as Sanji and Usopp both went to the ground. Everyone looked with fear in their eyes as Nami cried, "Don't tell me that they broke the rudder." She looked and saw one of the square arcs in front of them. "We're about to die." Luffy ran as he looked at Robin. "Grab, Robin." The girl nodded as many arms sprouted from the deck grabbing Luffy's legs. The boy jumped from the ship as he inhaled air. Gum gum. His body then inflated. Balloon. The ship then crashed into Luffy, who was squished between it and the arc. This caused the ship to bounce right back into course as the boy deflated, with Robin pulling him back into the ship. The girl kissed him. "Good thinking, Luffy." Nami yelled, "We made it. And it's all thanks to you, Luffy." She then hugged the rubber boy, causing jealousy to come from Robin, who coughed. This caused the orange-haired girl to blush as she backed away. "Sorry, I got caught inside the moment." The black-haired girl shook her head as she walked to Luffy and said, "Here's the beginning of our journey. I'll make sure to write it, so we can tell our children and grandchildren about it." The boy blushed as he looked away. Everyone was now cheering as the ship reached the top, and diverted its way, and began to head downwards as the crew looked ahead as Luffy said, "I can see the Grand Line up ahead." Luffy looked ahead and smiled. "I can't believe it. Only a few more moments, and my journey to become Pirate King begins. I'm going to enter the greatest sea in the world." He jumped around saying, "Full speed ahead." Robin only giggled in excitement. Suddenly, a huge sound emitted. "Boohhhhh." Zoro looked around with an uninterested look. Is it only me, or did you all hear this sound?" Luffy laughed as he pumped his fist. "Who cares? This is so amazing." Nami replied to him, "Don't worry, Zoro. This is most likely the wind. The Grand Line is full of them. They can make all sorts of sounds that are odd." Zoro nodded his head, but not fully convinced that it was just the wind. It sounded too animalistic if you asked him. Robin silently agreed with Zoro that the sound was odd, but she was sure that she heard it from somewhere else before. It was like. She cut from her thoughts when another sound similar to the one from before echoed throughout the entire place. Usopp then used his goggles. "Nami?" The girl looked at him. "Do your maps tell you that there should be something down there?" Sanji elaborated further. "There's a mountain down there, Nami Swan." Nami blinked in shock. All of her maps never mentioned a mountain down there. Nami shook her head. "A mountain? Impossible. The only thing that should be down there is the Twin Capes, and then we enter the open sea." She then looked and saw something huge covered by mist, causing her color to fade from her face as another howl occurred. Luffy was now intrigued at what was down there, wondering if he can ask him to join the crew. The mist cleared and they were all greeted by a horrifying sight. Down at the base of Reverse Mountain, a whale of humongous size was wailing into the sky. It had pitch black skin. Its teeth were larger than the ship itself by many times. Even its eyes were larger than the ship. But the most prominent feature was its head, which was full of scars. Usopp yelled in fear, "What should we do? This thing is enormous. There's no way around it." Luffy asked, "I think we should fight it." He was flicked by Robin. "Luffy, even you know better than to fight that. It's an island whale. These things are Mother Nature's weapons." Sanji said, "What the heck can we do? It's like a brick wall. I'm not even sure it even sees us given how huge and large it is. We should try to sneak our way around it." Nami quietly asked, "Island whales?" She shook her head as Zoro said, "Guys, I saw an opening beside the whale. We should turn portside before we become squished and sent to the bottom of the ocean." Everyone nodded as Usopp went to help Zoro. Luffy then exclaimed, "I have an idea." He then ran away with Robin, following to make sure he doesn't cause any problems or kill them for that matter. He was crafty sometimes, but the key word here was sometimes. In the kitchen, the guys were desperately trying to turn the ship left, but the rudder wasn't budging. Suddenly, a huge explosion sound was heard. Nami, Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji cried in shock and fear. He used the cannon against the whale. Down with Luffy, he's smiling as he felt the ship slow down. "Well, I told you my idea would work, didn't I?" Robin smiled slightly as sweat was still falling down her face from fear. Her boyfriend had crazy ideas, but this one against all odds worked out well, and they weren't dead, so that was something. Back outside, the ship was slowing down from the force of the blast that caused it to be sent backward. Finally, it came to a screeching halt as it smashed into the whale, but at the cost of destroying Luffy's special seat. Nami slumped forward with a haunted look on her face. "I thought I was about to die right now." Luffy entered the main deck with Robin as he saw his special seat destroyed, causing him to get angry. Meanwhile, the guys were all staring at the whale as they noticed that the blast also caused the whale to move a bit, opening more space to escape. Zoro said, "I think we should capitalize on this chance to run away from it. Come on." Usopp began to exclaim about how the beast didn't feel anything, but Sanji smacked him, telling him to focus on what's important right now. The guys began to row the boat away from the whale as it let out an ear-piercing sound, causing all of them to yell out in pain. Luffy walked calmly toward the front of the ship as Robin said, "Luffy, please don't do anything rash." Nami noticed him and wondered what he was planning to do. She was about to get her answer. Luffy looked at the whale and yelled, "Hey, you jerk." The whale didn't acknowledge him as the boy yelled, "You destroyed my..." He then punched the huge thing in its eyes, causing the entire crew to panic. Special seat. The whale's huge eye looked at the Mary, as all the occupants yelled in distress, "It saw us." Luffy stood there as Robin held the crew back from murdering him. Want to go for another round? Come on, let's duke it out, you huge moron." This caused both Usopp and Zoro to bypass Robin and kick him in the head, telling him to be quiet. Robin sighed as she grabbed Luffy and began to shake his head, something she learned to do all those years when she was frustrated with him. The girl asked in silent frustration, "What in the world possessed you to do that, Luffy?" Both of them didn't notice the whale open its huge mouth. This was extremely reckless, and it could have dinged just us. She stopped before asking, "What did we take about controlling your instincts?" Usopp tapped Robin on the shoulder. "Guys, the whale." Luffy defended himself. "Well, he started it, Luffy, he's a whale. Sure, island whales are smarter than any other whales out there, but still." She crossed her arms and pouted, "I'm sad with you now." The boy panicked as he told her, "No, I'm sorry. Don't be angry with me. I won't do it again, I promise." Both didn't notice the whale beginning to suck the ship in its mouth. The girl looked at him from the sides of her eyes. "Promise?" The boy nodded as the girl smiled. "Okay, you're forgiven." Both of them were grabbed by Nami, who yelled at them, "Get out of your lovey-dovey moment. We're about to become mincemeat." Both of them noticed that the whale has sucked the ship into its mouth and closed it. They joined everyone in screaming as everyone was being sucked down the whale's throat. Nami yelled, "I'm too young and beautiful to be digested. I don't want to become seafood for an oversized whale. Sanji jumped to her saying, "Don't worry, Nami Swan. I will protect you." The man tried to hug her, but she kicked him away from her, telling him to think better and faster. They all then felt the whale move as Robin said, "The whale must have gone underwater. We don't know how much till it goes to the surface again. We need to be ready to escape." Nami then asked, "How do we exit it in the first place?" Robin looked away as the girl got the message. Luffy then yelled, "We had to get out at any cost. We need to have more adventures." He was then smacked by Usopp. "Shut up, idiot. We're here because of you." The boy blinked as he said, "Right, I'm really sorry. I was only angry." Usopp smacked his forehead as he asked, "How's that supposed to help us?" The ship then splashed into somewhere. They looked around and they noticed that there were sky and birds. The boy blinked, "Are we outside?" Nami shook her head. "I really doubt that," she said, looking down at the green sea under them. She heard from Arlong that there was some weird stuff in the Grand Line, but this seems a little bit much out there, especially since they were still at the entrance of the Grand Line. "Does anyone have any rational explanation for this? Because I sure don't have any," Zoro asked. Luffy replied, "Maybe it's a magic whale." The man looked at him wanting to facepalm, but how many times he was proven wrong by the boy. He nodded his head. "I'm sure we were swallowed by the whale, so how did we end up here?" Sanji said, "Did we die, or are we dreaming?" Luffy then said, "That doesn't matter. First and foremost," everyone looked at Luffy, "we need to fix my special seed." This made Usopp, Zoro, and Sanji punch him while Robin shook her head at his silly attitude. The ship sailed forward as Robin asked Nami, "Perhaps, we're inside the whale. And someone painted it like this." She then noticed something, "And is that an island in the middle of the whale?" Everyone looked and sure enough there was an island. They didn't think too much about it as suddenly a huge squid popped from the green water as attacked the ship, causing everyone to go into defensive mode. Suddenly, it was speared through its head 3 times and fell into the water. Luffy then said, "Seems that someone is living here inside the whale." His eyes sparkled as he said, "That's so cool. I wish I can live here inside a whale." He was punched by Nami, who scolded him, "We don't know what's happening here." Zoro said, "Look, someone is coming out onto the same island." Usopp asked if they can shoot him, but Robin refused as she said that they shouldn't jump the gun yet. They looked at the island, and they saw a man standing there as he quietly said, "A ship. I never thought I'd see something like this here." He posed for a moment before adding, "At least not in one piece, that is." The person who was in front of them was an old man with his hair shaped in a flower-like pattern. This caused Sanji to say, "Is he a flower?" Zoro replied, "I don't think so." He was silenced by Luffy slamming his face into the railings as he said, "Hey, flower man, do you know where we are? And can you join my crew?" Sanji replied, looking at him, "I don't that he's a flower." Usopp wondered what was wrong with the old man given that he didn't speak anything since they came here. Zoro kicked Luffy away from him as he glared at the boy, "Don't do that ever again, or I'll flay you. Got it?" He warned with his sword pressed against his sword against Luffy's neck. The rubber boy laughed as he apologized to Zoro, who sighed. Robin then asked herself, did he save us, or was he just fishing and we were at the other end of winning? She shook her head trying to find a reasonable explanation for what was happening. Sanji then yelled, "Hey, old man. Can you tell us what's happening here? And how to get out of here?" The man merely stared back at Sanji with an intense look. The man then slowly walked and plopped inside a chair. This caused Sanji to yell in anger, "What the heck? Talk to us, you creepy geezer." The man merely scowled at them as Usopp panicked, "Hey, if you want to fight, we have a cannon and we aren't afraid to use it." The man stared at Usopp, scaring him. He finally answered, "Don't do that or someone might die." This caused tension to skyrocket as the fighters of the crew got ready while Usopp and Nami hugged each other in fear. Sanji asked him carefully, "Oh yeah, and who's going to die if we fought?" The man replied, "I'm the one going to die." This made Sanji yell in frustration, "You." Zoro grabbed his shoulder, clammed down swirly brow, "Don't give in to your anger." The blonde man scoffed as he walked away from the front of the ship as Zoro stood. "I'm sorry for this, but can you tell us?" The man cut him off, "I know that if you want something from someone you introduce yourself as common courtesy." The man then looked back at his newspaper. Zoro's eyebrows twitched, but he smiled, "Well, that's my bad. You see, I'm Rorona Zo." He was cut off by the man saying, "My name is Crocus. I'm the Lightkeeper of the Twin Capes. I'm 71 years old. My blood type is AB. My zodiac is the Gemini." The man continued to talk about himself, not noticing the anger that began to appear on Zoro's face. Zoro took out his sword and yelled, "What, can I kill him now?" Sanji grabbed him, telling him to calm down. The man continued to stare at them, unnerving everyone. Luffy then jumped, "Hey old man, tell us where we are. I don't have time for your games. Shouldn't you be helping people anyway?" Crocus looked at him, "I won't help anyone like you." This caused Luffy to yell in anger like Sanji and Zoro, "Let me at him. I'm so angry right now." The man talked, "You all came here to my private resort and caused all types of annoying noises. And finally, you're talking to me with that kind of attitude. And where do you think you are? A stomach of a mouse." Look, it's the stomach of a whale. Usopp shuddered as Nami cried silently, I don't want to become whale food. I'm too young and beautiful. The girl was brought out of her crying as Crocus coughed to grab their attention. If you want an exit, you should behind you. They all looked behind them, and there was a huge iron door that had an exit sign painted above it. They all sweat dropped as Robin said, we should have noticed that from the beginning. Robin then took a closer look at everything, and said, and it also seems that the sky is painted onto the stomach of the whale. Everyone looked at her. Look, everything in the sky is still and it's not moving. So it is like I said earlier, they all looked and she was right. She then asked, but this prompts a greater question. Why is he living inside a whale in the first place? Everyone was intrigued by her words, wondering the same thing. Crocus replied, it's warmer in here. Plus, the painting is just a pastime hobby, and it makes the place homelier. Usopp tried to argue, but Zoro grabbed him telling him to leave a way out, but suddenly everything began to shake. Crocus frowned as everything shook around them. Usopp then pointed out that the island that Crocus was on was nothing but an iron ship. This made everyone panic given that the ship might begin to slowly dissolve away, leading to their death in the long run. Robin asked Crocus, what's happening? Why is everything shaking so violently? He replied, this whale is bashing its head against the red line. Everyone was shocked, but then Robin said, the scars on his head are from him bashing his head, right? Usopp was confused, but Nami explained, you see the whale we saw had huge scars on his head. I thought it might have been from fights, but it appears that the scars are from something else. Add to that the wailing to the sky. I can say without any doubt that this whale is suffering and needs help. On the outside, the whale was bashing its head against the red line. Nami then said, this means that the man is trying to kill it from the inside. He was silenced by a hand blooming on her mouth as Robin said, it couldn't be any further from the truth. If he wanted to kill it, he would have done it already. Usopp then said, then why is he hiding here, and why is the whale bashing its head on the red line? Robin shrugged as Zoro told them that they should hurry before the acid does serious damage to the ship, with Sanji agreeing with him. In another section of the whale, two people opened a door leading to a series of corridors that runs throughout the whale. One of them was a woman with blue hair, and the other was a man with orange hair wearing a crown. The man said, we managed to enter the whale successfully. Our mission is to kill the old geezer, Ms. Wednesday. The woman nodded her head as the man added, this mission is for the sake of grabbing this whale to our town, so they don't starve to death. They then began to walk deeper inside the whale, trying their best to keep steady as the entire place was being shaken around with the whale banging its head against everything. Back with the crew, they were all panicking as the slamming motion was driving them away from the exit. Usopp yelled, what the heck are you doing, old man? Everyone looked and saw that the old geezer jumped into the stomach acid, much to everyone's shock. The man himself began to swim inside the acid, trying to reach the exit to go somewhere. The doors at the top of the exit opened, and the people from earlier entered the area. They said, where's the old man? We're here too. A sudden slamming motion caused them to lose their balance and fall directly into the acid. Luckily, the crew fished them out before any damage was done, though they were passed out from fear. Crocus himself ignored everything as he made his way to a room with a huge needle. He then injected something into the whale, causing it to calm down. This should stop him for a bit. The whale suddenly began to slow, as Crocus sighed in relief. This needle was filled with sedatives. He then said, your skin has become so tough that I needed to build this contraption so I can calm you down, Laboon. This wall separates the world's oceans, so I need you to stop or you'll die, my old friend. Once the whale fully stopped, the man headed back to where he came from. Back with the crew, Nami noted that the whale has calmed down. Usopp then asked the million-belly question, who are you, people? And what are you doing inside this whale in the first place? The man known as Mr. Nine said silently to his partner, these people seem to be pirates. The woman replied, but they seem understanding. Maybe we can reach a deal with them. Crocus returned as he looked at the two and said, I won't allow you to hurt, Laboon. Mr. Nine smirked as he and Ms. Wednesday lifted their weapons. All we had to do is blow a hole in it. He was silenced when he felt arms grabbing his body. He looked at his partner and she was in the same predicament. The sound of feet walking grabbed his attention. He looked up to see a dark-haired girl with a very dark look on her face as she said, there is no way in hell that I will allow to hurt this poor creature. She then tightened her grip on them till they passed out from fear once more. The girl smiled happily to herself, that's much better. A couple of minutes later, both of them were tied to the tree inside the artificial island as Crocus said, these clowns have been bothering Laboon for a while now. They want to kill Laboon because his meat can feed their town for 2 to 3 years. Robin nodded her head, he's an island whale. One of the biggest species of whale. I still remember them from the West Blue, but what is he doing here? The old man explained Laboon's backstory, how he was separated from his pod, how he befriended a group of friendly pirates, how he sailed with them, how he was too young to travel with them into the Grand Line so he was entrusted to Crocus, how the pirates went and disappeared into thin air, how Laboon ever since was sad, how he bashes his head against the red line hoping to destroy it to see his long-lost friends. The man then finished, "It's been 50 years since they left and Laboon still believes that one day they might return. I tried to explain to him, but he refuses to believe me." He then proceeded to guide them to the waterway which will help them exit the whale. Luffy said, "That's some waterway, old man. I'm amazed that you build this and live inside here too." The man chuckled, "This is nothing much. It's just a hobby that I do during my pastime. I have a real job after all. I used to have a clinic here to help people entering the Grand Line." Luffy smiled, "Really? You're a doctor? Join my crew. I really need one since I'm a walking biohazard." Robin gently flicked in his ear telling him not to say that again, which caused him to snicker. The man shook his head. The man then walked up and climbed the ladder leading to a lever as he said, "Don't be crazy. I'm too old for this. You need to find someone with fresh blood." The man opened the door and the ship sailed outside. They then dumped both the blue-haired and orange-haired strangers off their ship once they were outside. The crew sailed to the Cape Twins and rested there for a lunch break before carrying on with their journey. Once there they sat as Sanji said, 50 years, huh? That whale sure has high expectations." Luffy said, "I wonder what's taking them so long. I mean that should have been back by now." Sanji then chastised him, "Idiot, this is the Grand Line we're talking about. They said that they'd be back in 2 to 3 years, but they've been gone for 5 decades. It's clear that they're dead." Usopp began to argue with Sanji telling him to show more compassion to the whale, but Crocus said, "Sometimes the truth is hard to believe, but there's a reason for that." The man then explained that there is a chance that the crew left the Grand Line altogether leaving Laboon here alone and that's why he was so set on destroying the Red Line. Sanji was amazed by the story, but he pointed out that if the crew did leave the Grand Line then in essence they betrayed him too, wondering why the man was still taking care of the whale to this day. The man explained that the scars on Laboon's head are due to the constant attempts to break the Red Line, and if he continues on that he might die. He added that Laboon is his only companion, so he can't just leave him to die. Luffy, who heard the man's explanation, went to grab the ship's mast, but Robin caught onto him and pulled his ear as she said, "Is there a reason why you're planning to destroy part of the ship?" The boy replied with a whimper, "I want to help Laboon feel happy again. I was planning on something and I need the mast for it." The girl let go and said, "Leave the mast and use a boulder, Luffy." The boy thought about it and nodded. He then went and carved out a huge rock. The boy jumped into the air and smashed the rock into Laboon's head. The whale replied by wailing in pain before smashing the boy into the Red Line. Luffy punched the whale in the eye. He then jumped into the air and kicked him in the head. The two began to exchange hits as everyone wondered what Luffy was getting at except Robin. Luffy was then sent flying toward the rocks. Laboon was racing toward him when Luffy yelled, "It's a tie." The whale stopped for a moment looking at the boy. "I'm pretty tough, huh? We just had a small fight between us, but I can't continue it now. I'm going to the Grand Line and I will return so that we can have a rematch when I'm much stronger. Your old friends might be gone, but I'm still here, so don't go dying on me till we have a rematch." The whale looked at him, and tears began to fill its eyes as Luffy told him, "Wait for my return so we can have a second round." Everyone looked and smiled. Crocus was especially happy since Laboon seemed to have calmed down, and from the looks of it, he won't continue bashing his head against the Red Line. An hour later, Luffy stood there proudly with a brush as he finished drawing a twisted version of the Straw Hat's Jolly Roger on Laboon's scars. The boy said, "Now, this is a pact between us, so don't go bashing your head against the wall or it will be destroyed." The whale nodded his head in acceptance. After that, Sanji went to make food, and Zoro and Usopp just sat around, while Nami was trying to read the compass. The moment she looked at it, she yelled in fear. Robin came to her and asked, "What's wrong, Nami? Did something bad happen?" The girl panicked as she gave Robin the compass. Robin blinked before shrugging, taking the compass, and throwing it into the sea. She then gave Nami a small box. The girl opened the box and saw what looked like a small compass, but it only pointed north. Nami yelled, "What's this and why did you throw the compass?" Luffy popped out saying, "Well, you see, there's an anomalous electrode thingy that affects normal compasses, so you need," he pointed at the compass in her hand, "a log pose. It's like a special compass that catches the island's magnetic fields and guides you to them." He looked at Robin asking her, "Did I say it right?" The girl nodded her head. Nami looked at him briefly before standing up, going to the sea, putting her head in it, and from what both could tell screaming in it from frustration. Both looked at each as Sanji put the lunch and Luffy began to eat. Nami then jumped and ran toward Luffy yelling, "How do you know about this?" "Miss Olivia taught me that," the boy replied casually. Nami looked at Robin, "Your mother is a miracle worker." Robin laughed a little as they all dig in, but still had to protect their lunch from Luffy. After lunch, Crocus explained to them how the Grand Line works. He explained that there are 7 paths that a log pose can attach to, and from that point forward, one has to go along that path. The man elaborated further that if one wanted to change the path, he has to start all over again. And only at the end of the path at the other end of the Grand Line will they find the island known as Raftel, where the One Piece is present. A while later, Ms. Wednesday and Mr. Nine came back and begged the Straw Hats for a lift to their hometown Whiskey Peak. Although everyone was against it, Luffy expected it on the condition that they don't try to harm Laboon ever again, to which both of them agreed. In reality, Luffy felt a bit guilty because he accidentally destroyed their log pose, which he took as a backup in case the one he bought from Luge Town was damaged, during his small fight with Laboon. Nami then looked and said, "Look at this, it's pointing toward Whiskey Peak." Everyone jumped on the ship and began to sail away as the Straw Hats waved goodbye to Laboon and Crocus. Robin meanwhile was looking at Ms. Wednesday as she asked no one in particular while looking at a newspaper, "I wonder why a princess is posing as a bounty hunter while her kingdom is in ruins." The newspaper in her hand was old, but the title was clear: Princess Vivi of Alabasta went missing, a new enemy. Luffy and the crew, in addition to their mostly unwanted guests, were now sailing away from the Twin Capes. The crew was now 3 hours into the sea as they began to plan their next steps. First, they were taking strangers to their home island, which was the same place that their log pose was directing them. It seemed too good to be true, so that's why Nami was a little bit worried. Second, they didn't know if they were being led into a trap by their mystery guests. Third, and most importantly, they didn't know what kind of trouble this will cause them in the long term, but Nami could sense something coming into the horizon. Currently, she was checking the log pose as Robin told her, since the weather in the Grand Line seemed to have a mind of its own, so she was careful not to miss a beat, or else they'd be doomed to die before their journey even begun. The girl laughed as she looked down, and saw Luffy building a snowman. For all his seriousness and hidden IQ, he could be childish sometimes. Well, she couldn't complain, because it was this childish behavior that saved her village and her people from Arlong's rule, so was she to judge. Luffy said, "Look at my creation. The perfect snowman. I call it the Iceman." He looked and saw Robin smiling at him from the rails as she gave him a thumbs up. Usopp then laughed a little as he said, "Well, your snowman doesn't hold a candle to my masterpiece." The snow sculpture looked suspiciously similar to Kaya. "I call it the Queen of the Snow. It will be the most awesome snowman ever." Robin giggled from the rails saying, "Well, it appears that someone is homesick and misses a specific someone." The long-nosed boy blushed as he denied her accusations, making her giggle even harder. The girl looked to the side and saw Zoro snoozing away. She sweat dropped, wondering how he can sleep while the snow was mounting on him. Luffy then said, "Let's make this a snowman war." The long-nosed boy didn't get to think long as Luffy launched one of his snowman's arms, decapitating Usopp's statue and causing the boy to yell in distress as he held the head of his work. Usopp then looked at Luffy and said, "This obviously means war." The boy collected a snowball and threw it toward Luffy's snowman, which knocked him over. Nami sighed while Robin giggled. The orange-haired navigator yelled, "Sanji, do you see anything on the horizon?" The man replied, "I see nothing, but our love, Nami Swan." The girl sighed as she looked at the noodle dance that Sanji was performing for her up in the crow's nest, so she yelled, "Sanji, be careful. You might fall over if you keep dancing this way." The man stopped, quickly saluting the woman as he continued to look out for their first island in the Grand Line. Nami entered the kitchen to drink a cup of water when she saw their two guests sitting there as if they were royalty. Ms. Wednesday complained, "Aren't there any warmer sheets you have? I'm basically freezing over here. Plus, can you make me a cup of hot chocolate?" Mr. Nine said, "Where's the food? I'm kinda hungry. You should really take better care of your guests." Nami had many veins throb throughout her forehead from anger as she calmed herself. Sadly, the two continued to complain, making the girl reach her limit. "Shut the hell up. This isn't some floating hotel in the middle of the sea. It's snowing, so go out and help shovel the snow, since you're both stowaways that can be kicked out any moment." "Nami Swan, we have a problem. There's a storm on the horizon, and it's coming closer to the ship." The girl panicked as she looked at the log pose, which has changed its position. She was shocked. She heard Robin's warning, but she literally checked everything not a minute ago, so how come there was a storm coming their way right now? Ms. Wednesday said, "It would appear that you underestimated the weather of the Grand Line a little bit, and check out the rudder. It was unattended to for a while now." The girl looked and noticed the change in the log pose. She ran out and yelled, "Stop everything that you're doing. We need to turn around 180 right now." Everyone was confused as Luffy asked, "What? Why? We can't just return. We just left. Did we forget someone there?" Usopp looked just as confused as he was. Nami shook her head. The ship had turned 180 degrees without anyone noticing. "Now we're heading in the opposite direction of our destination. I can't believe this. I only took my eyes off it for 1 minute. How can it change so much?" Ms. Wednesday from the kitchen said, "You've been played by the waves, I see. Are you sure that you're a navigator?" The girl chastised Nami, making the orange head furious. "In the sea, you can't trust anyone or anything. The clouds, waves, winds, or anything else are just a false sense of security. You seem to be fresh blood here, so I'll give you a break and a small piece of advice. You're to only trust the direction of the log pose. Do you understand?" The girl, for all her trouble, had one of Nami's fists meet her skull as the girl growled, Get out now and help us fix everything because you're on this boat with us. And if we die, you're dying with us. Mr. 9 said, you can't force us to work here. Rear. The girl put a fist in his fist as she said, did I hear anyone complaining? The man got the message and remained quiet to avoid the girl's wrath since she seemed to carry a lot of it. The girl smiled as she grabbed both of them. Now get out and help us direct the ship so we don't sink into the ocean. She threw them outside into the cold. They looked and saw a huge storm brewing in the distance. Nami went outside saying, prepare yourself, everyone. Nami then said, I want the 2 clowns to go to the right side since we need wind from that direction, and Usopp to go to control the jib sail. Sanji, I want you to go and take control of the rudder and make sure never to take your eyes off it. Both men gave affirmatives as their guests complained about how Nami was a slave driver. The moment Usopp reached the right side of the ship and was about to open the sails, the winds changed their direction. The boy gasped as he said, no, that's not possible. The wind just changed its direction. It didn't help that the duo of their guests were beginning to get on everyone's nerves. Robin summoned a couple of arms and spread them through their bodies and said, be useful or be silent. The 2 nodded, remembering the treatment Robin gave them before. Robin looked at Zoro and summoned an arm and punched him in the head trying to wake him up, but the man was unresponsive. She then heard Nami tell her to go portside, so she quickly ran and left the sleeping swordsman as Usopp shouted at him to wake up and help them. Luffy exclaimed, wow, I see a dolphin. Check it out, guys. He then felt a hand flick him and Robin said, we'll see it later, Luffy. Now come and help me manage the sail. The boy nodded his head as he ran to help Robin. Usopp then yelled, the waves are getting higher with each second, his eyes bugged out, and there's an iceberg coming at 10 o'clock. The boy quickly ran to bring some planks in case the ship was injured due to the impact of the iceberg. Nami panicked, what in the world is wrong with this ocean? It's like it has a mind of its own. Robin was worried too. Even with all the stories, her mother told her about the Grand Line's crazy weather. Nothing could have prepared her for this. Mr. 9 smugly laughed, this is the Grand Line for you. Welcome to the grave of pirates. He was quickly shut up by a fist from Luffy who told him to shut his mouth. Sanji in the kitchen meanwhile was desperately trying to steer the ship away from the iceberg. His efforts paid off, but not without damages as the ship's side grazed the iceberg causing damages to the hull of the ship. Luffy came running, the ocean water is leaking inside the storage room. We need to fix it quickly. Usopp quickly gathered the planks and ran to the lower levels of the ship to seal off the leak. Nami then looked at the sky and began to sweat a little, it'll bit too fast. She then frowned as she yelled, everyone brace yourselves, the winds are going to increase up a notch. Everyone then jumped to handle the sails from the very strong winds that just occurred with Sanji making trips to them to get them food to keep hunger away from them. After a couple of hours, everything went back to normal. Zoro began to wake up. The man yawned as he opened his eyes and said, man, what a nice day. He began to stretch his muscles as he noticed that everyone was laying around the ship, which caused him to frown a little. Sure, he naps a little bit, but there's no need to be lazy. He looked at everyone and said, listen, guys, I know that the weather is all nice and cozy, but you can't just lay around on the deck without doing anything. I mean, we need to do something. This is the Grand Line after all. He turned to Nami, and are we going in the right direction? Everyone was enraged by him since he was the same person who slept throughout their entire ordeal earlier and wanted to pound him to the ground. The swordsman then noticed the 2 weirdos who attacked them back at the Twin Capes are on the ship. Wait, what are guys doing here? I thought we kicked you out of the ship back at the Twin Capes? This caused Mr. 9 to scream in exasperation. He looked and saw Luffy massaging Robin's back, who was glaring at him for some reason. Well, we're headed toward their hometown, so he decided to give them a ride. Zoro rubbed the back of his head as he said, I don't know. I mean, that did attack us, so we aren't obliged by any means to give them a ride home. We can just kick them here and let them fend for themselves. Robin said from her place as she groaned from the pain of what happened earlier, no, we already gave them a ride, might as well complete it. Zoro walked to their guests of honor and sat right in their faces. Can you tell me your names again? He put his chin between his thumb and index finger. Those names have something sinister about them. I can't help but think that I know those names from somewhere. Both of them panicked as the man said with sweat flying down his face, my name is Mr. 9 and my beautiful partner's name is Ms. Wednesday. Zoro rubbed his chin as he said, well, you aren't helping yourself here. Those names sound shady as hell. Both of those names are bothering me as hell itself. I'm semi-sure that I heard something similar somewhere. He then grinned evilly at them, but the question remains. Did I truly hear them somewhere, or is my own imagination playing tricks on me? The man didn't get to continue his rant as Nami punched him to the ground as a menacing aurora engulfed her as she held her fist high. Did the nap you take was good? Because when you were sleeping, we were slaving off trying to save the ship from sinking. What do you have to defend yourself with? The man looked at her with a menacing aurora of his own, but this was a mistake on his end as she stopped him with a couple of punches to the head. The man was now hunched over with wallops on his head as Nami said, listen up everyone, don't let your guard down. I admit that I was fooled by the calm weather that was happening here, but now I know better. The girl clenched her fist. I now understand the terrifying odds that we are up against. I know why they call it the Grand Line, so it won't be able to take me by surprise. I know why navigation skills failed, but I promise you going on, it won't happen again. Usopp asked her, are you sure that we're going to be fine? The girl smiled as she pointed to the log pose. We're still going in the right direction, aren't we? For now, let's rest a bit since it would take a couple of days to reach Whiskey Peak. Robin sat calmly as she was observing Ms. Wednesday. She was still wondering how to address her so that she knows who she really is. This itself posed many questions. Why is she here? Why did she leave her country while it was in extreme need of her? Did she do it to escape the consequences of what the international media portrayed as her father's actions? Is she working with someone to overthrow her own father to take the throne for herself? Is she doing this as a form of support to the low class of their kingdoms? Or was through deeper that was going on inside her kingdom that pushed her to disappear and change her appearance or at least her identity? The girl didn't know what to make of her situation, but she knew that whatever the blue-haired princess had to say would explain a lot about the situation in her country. A pity that she didn't know how to approach her. Should she go directly to her? No, that would alert her partner that something is suspicious. Should she wait for the night to come and then corner her? No, that would be counterproductive, and it won't lead to the answers that she wants to hear. Should she ask to talk to her? No, that also we don't do the tricks and she can refuse. The girl wanted to talk to her so much that she didn't notice Luffy approaching her and hugging her from behind as he said, "Where you think, Robin?" The girl looked at him and said, "I was thinking about something, but I can't find the solution to what I need." The boy only chuckled as the girl pouted at him and turned away, faking her hurt feelings. The boy rubbed her face against hers, making her feel better. He asked her, "What are you thinking about? Maybe I can help you?" The girl bit her lip since her boyfriend was not known for being subtle. He was subtle as an angry bull inside a china shop, which wasn't very good at all. The girl said, "I want to talk to one of our esteemed guests." The girl, "But I can't find a way to talk to her alone." The girl wanted to talk to her for another reason. Alabasta was another country that was rich in history, so perhaps she can find something about the Void Century there. The boy rubbed his head. "I think that she just entered the kitchen." The girl smiled as she hugged her boyfriend and kissed him. She raced to the kitchen because she wanted to get her answers. She has followed the news of the country's decline for quite a while. She entered the kitchen and noticed that the girl was drinking a cup of water. She decided that the best time to talk to her would be right now. She walked up to her and said, "Hi." The blue-haired girl looked at her confused. The girl seemed to be not sure if the girl was talking to her. "Are you talking to me?" Robin replied, "Is there anyone here other than the both of us?" The girl looked around and saw that it was true that no one other than themselves are inside the room, so she replied, "Yeah, no." Robin smiled as she sat on the table and said, "Want to talk?" The girl seemed suspicious for a moment, but shrugged and sat beside Robin as the black-haired girl asked her, "How did you like the voyage with us so far? I hope that it was to your liking." The girl smirked a little. "Well, I'll say it was good till you decided to treat us like slave labor." The girl now held the smuggest expression that she can muster. "You'd think that you can treat your guests with better manners, but I suppose that it can't be helped." Robin's smile was now strained. "Well, it was either helping us." Robin's smile became a little bit evil as she added the next part, "Or you can swim with the fishes in the ocean, princess." The girl would forever feel the satisfaction of seeing the girl's smug look shatter into pieces before she managed to collect herself once more as Robin asked her, "So what do you want to talk about?" The girl was now beginning to sweat. Maybe Robin's mom was right that she did have a morbid sense of humor, but Luffy always said that she was funny. The blue-haired girl replied, "What do you have in mind?" The girl now knew that she had nowhere to go and that she can't avoid this conservation as her fear overrode everything else. "History," Robin replied, "You see, I grew up on Ohara, the island of scholars. I used to read books about different countries and their history. One of those countries that I read about was Alabasta. On countries that formed the world government after the events of the Void Century, though its family was the only one that refused to ascend to the title of a celestial dragon." The girl was visibly shaking but tried to keep it under control. The blue-haired girl then said, "Interesting. That is very interesting." Her smile was very forced at this point as she tried to feign away any weakness that she might let through. Robin replied, "Have you been to Ohara? The island is very welcoming, though if you had to encounter my horrible aunt, you might want to visit it anymore." The girl brightened up a little bit. "Yeah, I visited once with my father when I was younger. I really liked the huge tree there. It is really full of books about everything." Robin was shocked that the princess actually visited the island. The talk was a diversion to have let her guard down. The girl took hook, line, and sinker, though Robin did learn something new for now. She would grill her later for the details. Robin then said, "So tell me, what do you think of the books on politics? I used to read them a little, but when the scholars told me that history had politics in it, I began to read them further." The girl replied, "I didn't read that many books." Robin frowned a little. She hated when someone missed reading a good book. She really loved when she, Luffy, and Ace used to sit together and read books to improve their skills in reading and writing. That's a pity. Next time you visit it, you should try and read some books. They're really beneficial. I mean, what could be better than knowledge? The girl forced a smile on her face as she tried not to seem suspicious. I will take that into a recommendation, but I doubt that I'll be able to go there given that you and your friends stopped us from taking that whale home. Robin replied, sorry, but not really. I mean, what were you going to gain from killing this whale other than feeding the village? Go fishing. She decided to return to their original talk, however. I think that we deviated from our original talk regarding Alabasta a little bit. The blue-haired girl tensed a little bit. Tell, Ms. Wednesday, was it? The girl nodded her head. The ruling family there is having scandal after scandal leveled against them. The rebels say that they're deliberately starving towns to ensure that the capital stays well and strong. Plus, their princess went to God knows where, when the country was in desperate need of her. The girl cut her off. I think that we should check the facts before we throw preemptive judgments. The girl now had a fierce look in her eyes. Robin pretended to be surprised as she inquired, what do you mean by that? I mean, that is what it seems to be. Evidence was even provided by the rebels that proved the allegations. The girl shook her head. I know that, but that's the rebels' side of the story, and no one till now bothered to hear the royal family's side of the story, which means that there's a missing link. The girl took a deep breath as she exhaled, saying, I mean that each side should be allowed to say what they have before judgments are thrown and blood is spilled. She then rubbed her shoulder, and regarding the princess, no one what she's doing. She could be assassinated or worst kidnapped, so I say that she shouldn't be judged for disappearing before the truth comes out. Robin put a hand on her cheek as she said, well, Princess Vivi, enlighten me. Why did you leave your country and play bounty hunter when the people desperately needed you? The blue-haired woman choked on her own breath as she said, what? I think that you must. She was silenced when a newspaper was thrown in her face. The girl looked at it and paled. Right on the front page was her. Robin then said, either this is your long-lost twin, or you're a really good doppelganger. The girl now known as Vivi clutched the newspaper as she knew that this might happen someday. Since when did you know? The moment you asked to hitch a ride on our ship, Robin replied. What are you going to do now? Tell them who I am. No, not really. I just want to know, why did you leave your country? Vivi was in shock as she didn't expect the girl to say that, but at the same time, she couldn't risk telling her the truth. They were pirates. They could at any moment turn against her and hand her over to her enemy, or they could keep her and demand a very hefty ransom. Vivi replied, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you anything. If I do, all the hard work that I put in to save my country from the evil that awaits, it will be destroyed in mere moments. She readied herself for the worst as the girl hugged her. Robin then said, I'm sorry if I sounded a little bit harsh, but I won't push for any more details. I know how it's like to feel that your home is in danger, she said, reminiscing about the threat of the Buster call, because I already experienced it once. She stood up, don't worry, your secret is safe with me. She walked to the door, but if you need any help, don't feel shy to ask us. My boyfriend wouldn't have a problem lending you a hand to deal with whatever threat you have. Robin exited the kitchen, leaving the girl for her thoughts. The girl began to rummage through her coat as she pulled out a den mushi, and called someone. When the other side replied, Vivi said, I've been compromised. Someone knows who I am. We need to deal with him immediately once we reach Whiskey Peak. The other voice said, calm down, once you reach the town, we'll iron out the details. The line was then cut off as Vivi put her head on the table, before regaining her Ms. Wednesday persona and leaving the room. 2 days later, Usopp from above the crow's nest yelled, land is in front of us. We have officially reached Whiskey Peak. I repeat, we've reached Whiskey Peak. Everyone came over and looked with fascination. Suddenly, the weird duo that they had been carrying around jumped on the railing as Mr. Nine said, thank you for the stay, but I think that we must go now. Don't you agree, Ms. Wednesday? The woman merely nodded as she eyed everyone, especially Robin. The duo then jumped and began to swim away from the boat. Everyone looked at them weirded out by this, but shrugged as they returned to looking at the island up ahead of them. Luffy was excited because this was the first island that he will land on during his adventure in the Grand Line. Robin was excited because of all of the stories her mother told her about her travels. Usopp was excited because it was a story about how he will become a brave warrior of the sea. Zoro just wanted to find someone to fight against so he can become better. Sanji only wanted to see the women of the island. And finally, Nami wanted to draw the map of the island to start her world map. The crew then began to approach the island as Luffy said, let's dock already. Everyone prepared to dock the ship. Usopp then said, wait, what will we do if this island is full of monsters? Luffy replied too happily for Usopp's taste, we fight till there's nothing left, but us. He was smacked by Usopp, who yelled, not everyone is invulnerable like you and Zoro. Some of us are still human beings at the end of the day. We have to dock anyways if we want to continue sailing. Luffy said as he pouted angrily with Robin standing by his side and adding, he's right. If we don't, we'll be lost in a circle that we won't be able to escape from. Usopp was still confused by all of this as the ship entered the fog that was covering the island. Nami then explained, listen everyone. Like Luffy said, we have to dock because for us to sail, we need the log post to catch a new magnetic field to start going. But every island has its own time for the log post to reset, so this might take a while. So might as well make ourselves comfortable. Usopp then panicked, do you mean we have to dock on this island even if there were monsters? The girl nodded as Usopp fake coughed. I think I can't go to this island, disease. He was ignored by everyone as Luffy said, we'll see what when dock. Everyone agreed with that. Once they left the fog, they saw the island up close. The island seemed to be formed from cacti as its mountains seemed like cactus plants. Robin knew that she owed an apology to her mother since the woman told her about an island made from marshmallows and she asked if she was smoking weed at the time. Though, she did earn a wallop for that little statement. However, what shocked the crew the most was the warm welcome they received from the villagers. While most would run away for their lives, they didn't. Once the villagers saw them, they began to cheer for them. Look, the pirates are here. What a great day, run, tell everyone here to start celebrating their arrival. The adventurers of the sea are here. Go and wake up everyone to start the party. What a happy day, please come by my house to my fun and drink together. The crew was shocked, but there were two reactions to this. The ones who were taken by the greeting were Usopp, Sanji, and Luffy. The three began to wave to the people and bathe in their love. The other reaction was those who were suspicious of this whole thing and they were Zoro, Robin, and Nami. The three didn't trust any of this, but decided to play along with them. The ship then docked as people continued to greet them as a man holding a saxophone approached them. The man was wearing a suit with black boots. The man had his hair in bizarre curly positions. The man said, I'm Igorot Boy, the mayor of this city. Now, I know that some of you might be suspicious of us given that most villages have its citizen escape away when pirates come, but we, here at Whiskey Peak, hospitability is our motto. Luffy wanted to jump down, but Robin stopped him from going down. The boy looked at her as she whispered through a disembodied mouth formed on the back of his head, don't fall for their tricks. The boy nodded as he jumped down anyway. The boy landed in front of the mayor as he looked at him and said, man, your hair is really curly. The man didn't seem offended. The man smiled, we, here, also love to help people such as yourselves adventurers who brave the sea. So please, allow us to make a huge party to celebrate your journey till now. We will give you food and drinks, while you tell us the stories that you collected during your adventures. The boy decided to play along and nodded his head. The man then walked away with the villagers as Robin and the others jumped. Luffy turned and said, Robin, are you sure that they're tricking us? They seem really nice. The girl nodded her head as she knew that in his heart, Luffy to some extent thought that all people are as good as he was or at least had some good in them. The boy sighed as Usopp said, what, they're tricking us? No way, have you seen how they greeted me? Zoro replied, that's kinda the whole point from the whole greeting thing. It's to lower our guards, and take out quickly. Usopp frowned as he began to mumble about how Zoro was wrong. Sanji then said, are you sure? I mean look at the beautiful ladies on the island. They can't be tricking. The blonde was shut up by Nami punching him in the head as she complained about his perversion reaching a whole new level. Luffy then said, alright look, we'll go to the party, but we'll keep our guard up to keep them from pulling tricks over our heads. Everyone agreed to the decision and they walked inside the town. At the night, the entire crew was inside a local bar as they partied with the villagers. Usopp and Sanji quickly fell apart as they were taken by the villagers' tricks. The first was so taken aback by people listening to his story and Sanji only needed women to add to the mix to crumble. The others were doing better as Zoro was drinking away with Nami who was challenging a nun to a drinking contest. Luffy was eating food, but he was making sure not to eat a lot so he won't be taken out. Of course, Robin kept an eye on him to make sure that he didn't overdo it. Robin herself pretended to read a book and sleep. In a house on top of one of the mountains of Whiskey Peak, a house was there. Inside the house Mr. 9 and his partner. The woman was looking at the man who was writing a letter to their boss telling how they managed to snatch the new upcoming pirate crew from the East Blue. And with this, we have made up for our mistakes. The man then put the letter inside a box that had the word, Baroque, on it. Suddenly the letter is taken by an otter and a vulture. They were known as the Unluckies, Miss Friday and Mr. 13. The Unluckies then put a new letter. When the duo opened it, they read that the boss now wanted the black-haired girl that was on the Straw Hat crew. This made the girl's heart freeze since this could threaten her plans. Back in the bar, all the crew was sleeping. Luffy and Robin were curled up together. Nami and Zoro were both sleeping with their heads on the table. Both Sanji and Usopp were sleeping with their face on the ground. On the outside, the mayor was walking as he said, man, the moonlight reflecting on the cactus rock. It truly reflects the beauty of this island. The man turned around when he heard shuffling behind him. That's truly poetic, Mr. 9 said. Never thought that you were one of those people. Ms. Wednesday said, tell me, how was your mission Mr. 8? How are the pirates? The man turns to them and he says, they are all sleeping deep inside hell right now. Suddenly a door was opened and from it came the nun woman who was complaining. Did we have to put a party for them? Couldn't we just pound them to paste when they docked? I mean, our village doesn't have enough food to feed us. And thanks to that party, we don't have enough to feed the children. She looked at the Mr. 9 duo. No thanks to you too. The two complained, but Mr. 8 said, wait, there's no need to fight. We can take the boy and the girl and hand over their bounties. Everyone looked at him weirded out. Don't tell me, you didn't do their research about this group of pirates. He sighed as he lifted the wanted bounty posters of both Robin and Luffy, shocking everyone. Mr. 9 said, well, only the boy because the boss she that he wanted the girl for some reason. Mr. 8 coughed as he seemed to be debating with himself and said, alright. For now, we raid their boat and take whatever treasure they added for our town. Please we also take the boy alive to the Marines since they like public executions, or we lose 30% of the bounty. The three nodded their heads. They were then startled when someone said, I believe that's all I need to hear here to know that you're all a bunch of bullshit. They all looked up to see Zoro sitting on the top of the building with one of his swords in his hands. A second voice came out, man, I really didn't want them to be evil, but I guess that there's no helping it now. They looked and saw Luffy leaning against a wall on one of the roofs. A third voice then came and said, I really didn't believe any of your tricks. You shouldn't oversell it next time. They looked and saw Robin standing on a third roof as she added, plus you can tell your boss that I'm not interested in whatever offer that he has to give me. Mr. 8 was shocked when he saw them as he heard someone yelling that some of the pirates managed to escape. How are you all awake? You all should be sleeping. The man could get the girl since she didn't eat or drink anything, but both boys should be still sleeping. Luffy shrugged as Zoro said, a true swordsman can't allow alcohol to control his actions no matter what. Zoro smirked as he said, now tell me what do you want with us, Baroque works, Baroque works. Every single member of the bounty hunters was looking up in shock toward the trio, each sitting or preaching over a rooftop. They couldn't just get how they managed to escape from their trap. It always worked perfectly, and no one ever suspected anything. But the worst thing about this situation was that someone knew the name of their organization. That was impossible and dangerous to them in the first place. They looked at him in shock and disbelief. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Igarupe asked with sweat traveling down his face for various reasons at the moment. I have to admit that this little trick of yours is impressive, but I found it kinda odd that citizens are greeting pirates, Zoro explained. So you're just a bunch of bounty hunters that trick unsuspecting pirates and lure them into a false sense of security before you attack them and hand over their bounty. The man then began to look at them. So I see that there are over 100 bounty hunters here. Zoro hummed in a calm voice. He then looked at Luffy and asked, so how are gonna split the kills in between us? Luffy then smashed his fist into his hand as he said, I have an idea. Let's have a contest. The person who has the greatest number of kills wins the entire fight. Zoro shook his head before looking back at Robin, who nodded. They then heard Igarupe ask, how do you mean of this organization's name? Tell me. Zoro stood up as he unsheathed his white sword and said, you see, a couple of years back some idiot came to me and asked me if I was interested in joining an organization back then and working for his boss. The secrecy of this organization and the rank names made me tell that man one thing: if they want to work for them, they should send their boss to bow and ask me personally. Then there's your boss, who no one here knows where he is or who he is. You Baroque work crooks sure obey his orders blindly. Zoro smirked as he chuckled a little. Tell me something. Was that supposed to be some kind of secret? Igarupe regained his composure. I suppose that the current situation is a little bit unexpected, but then his face took a darker look as he added, but I think that tonight the Cactus Mountains will have a new tomb added to them. Robin's eyes widened as she finally understood the cactus-shaped mountains and their needles. The needles were just a bunch of tomb headstones. Igarupe then yelled, get them and do. He looked and all three were gone. Every member of the hunters readied their weapons, expecting the trio will come out of nowhere, while in reality Zoro tripped and fell in an alley. Luffy fell while Robin went down to check on them. The bounty hunters held their swords and their weapons tight to their hands as they looked around when suddenly Zoro asked from between them, looking for someone. They looked yelled in fright as Zoro smiled happily, let the fight begin. They all readied their guns and shoot at him, but the man disappeared, causing the bounty hunters to shoot at each. They looked around trying to find him. Igarupe gritted his teeth in annoyance as he said, pull your weight. He's just one swordsman. Kill him. He was silenced when a sword pierced one of his curls. Zoro then asked him in a serious voice that made shivers run down his spine, tell me, what would be more beneficial for the graveyard industry here? One tombstone or a dozen? The bounty hunters saw that Zoro was now near Igarupe and aimed their weapons at him, causing the man to yell in fear, wait, you morons. I'm still here. The man pulled out a saxophone and was about to do something till something landed in his path. It was none other than Luffy, who said, don't hog all the fun, Zoro. The boy looked at the men and said, gum gum. He then stretched his leg backward and brought it back. Whip. The rubber leg arched, taking out 10 bounty hunters who were in its path. The boy looked at Igarupe, who said, end of the line, boy. The man blew into his saxophone. and bullets began to rain down on Luffy, but the boy chuckled as the bullets hit his body, but flew back toward Boy, who jumped away. A yell could be heard as Zoro admonished Luffy, "You dumb idiot, you could have killed me." The rubber could only reply in a very unapologetic tone, "Sorry, Zoro." They didn't notice a couple of bounty hunters coming nearer to them, but suddenly when the bounty hunters tried to move, hands appeared all over their bodies and clenched them in a very painful pose. They heard the soft sound of feet as Robin walked past them and snapped her fingers, snapping their backs in the process. Boy then yelled, "Attack them. There's only 3 of." He looked and saw that all 3 have disappeared once again, causing him to yell, "They disappeared once more?" The man then said, "All right, fan out and find them. Make sure to kill the swordsman, but if you can take the boy alive, do it. For the girl, having her alive is of utmost importance." Mr. 9 then said, "Do they really think that they have a chance against us?" The man shook his head. "Let's finish this already. I want to go and sleep a little. I'm tired from working like a slave for that she-devil that they call a navigator." The man shivered, remembering Nami. On the side, Luffy said, "I have 10 kills to beat that Zoro." The man shook his head. "Well, I have 15. I'm higher than you, so that means that I won." They both looked at Robin, who bloomed 2 hands in addition to her other 2, making both of them feel dejected that they lost. Zoro then looked at the rest of the bounty hunters and said, "Let's go, we still have a couple more idiots to get rid of." He then looked at his new sword and smiled, "Plus I want to test out my new swords on them." Meanwhile, the rest of the Straw Hats were still in deep sleep, but one of them began to wake up. Back to the trio, they heard a click as someone yelled, "Found you 3." Luffy, Zoro, and Robin replied quickly by punching, slashing, and breaking his bones. They all agreed that they might have gone overboard with that guy. They quickly divided themselves so they can split their enemy. Zoro dashed inside the house, Robin went into the alleyways, and finally, Luffy launched himself into the distance. With Zoro, the man entered the house only to see a couple of bounty hunters with guns waiting for him at the windows. The man ran and slid under the table, kicking it and making it into a shield to protect himself from the hail of bullets that they were targeting him. Once Zoro regained control of the situation, he smirked from behind the table as he unsheathed the yubashiri, and cut through the table as he raced toward the bounty hunters and took them down in one swipe of the blade. The man looked at his blade and said, "Light and nice. I already like this sword." He then heard a couple of voices and said, "Well, look at that, it seems that they already found me." The man then went up a set of stairs. He quickly found a man holding a bazooka waiting for him, but suddenly the man had a rubber hand grab him and yank him toward the alleyways as Zoro yelled, "Hey, that was my kill." The man then noticed that he was being surrounded by a couple of men and he decided to pop out both Yubashiri and Kitetsu. The man then ducked and sliced a barrel that Ms. Monday threw him, causing the rubble to hit some of the bounty hunters. Some of the contents of the barrel hit Zoro's face, causing him to say, "All this lost sake. What a waste of a good drink." Ms. Monday tried to do the man, but a couple of phantom hands appeared over her legs and pulled her down the building. Zoro then ducked his head to the side as she swung Kitetsu and cut through a rock mallet. The man was shocked at how strong his blade was as he used Yubashiri to knock out a couple of bounty hunters. He cut through the mallet easily. It is to be expected from it, but a legendary blade should only kill when its user wants it to. He then went down the stairs and saw a child who aimed a knife at him, but Zoro knocked it and took him out, trick him. He looked and saw that the place was barren, so he said, "The others must have taken them out. Better run to find some more people." The man began to run around the town and he only found people with broken bones or bruises all over their bodies. The man chuckled to himself as he finally stood in front of Boy, who said, "It appears that we're both here." The man quickly went for his saxophone, but Zoro didn't give him time as he quickly slashed it into pieces. The curly-haired man frowned as he had a string in his hand and yelled, "I will not go down so easily." Zoro was shocked when the man had gun barrels come out of his hair and began to shoot at him. Zoro jumped to the side, dodging the bullets. Boy yelled, Ma, you will not go out of this island alive. You will go out of here in a casket." Once Boy finished shooting at the swordsman, he looked around nervously, hoping that he managed to get Zoro, but suddenly felt pain travel through his body, making the man fall to the ground. He looked up and saw Zoro standing there with a very calm expression. "How?" Zoro replied calmly, "You're just a small fish here. You should learn your place in this world." The swordsman heard footsteps behind. He turned around thinking that his friends finished their fights, but saw 2 completely different people, causing him to say, "How the hell are you?" With Luffy, once the boy launched himself, he saw a couple of bounty hunters following, which made him smile. He was going to have so much fun fighting these people. When he landed, he was in an open field with bounty hunters surrounding him. The boy smiled as he cracked his knuckles and said, "Bring it on." Men holding guns then began shooting at him, only for the bullets to hit his body and recoil back to the source, taking out a couple of people. Luffy then jumped into the air and yelled, "Gum Gum." He then began to throw one punch after the other, Gatling. Scores of bounty hunters fell to the ground groaning in pain as Luffy landed beside them and turned around. "All right. "Who's next?" The boy then dashed forward readying his fist. Someone from an alley jumped on the boy raising his sword as he yelled, "Die brat." Luffy dodged the blade by ducking under and kicking the man away, causing him to hit a couple of his comrades, knocking them out cold too. The boy looked at them and said, "Come on, fight better. You guys are seriously weak. You can't even throw a proper punch." Luffy said as he ducked under a fist before kicking its owner away. Luffy then grabbed a man who was shooting at him and yelled, "Gum gum." He began to rotate the man around using him as a human hammer, live hammer. At the end of this, the man was filled with cuts and bruises from the less than gentle treatment he just received. Luffy let him down as he set two arms in different directions and stretched them. He began to back away at the same time till his hands were stretched to the maximum, and yelled, "Gum gum rocket." He let go of what he was holding and was sent barreling toward the bounty hunters, taking lots of them in one hit. As he was soaring through the air, he noticed a bazooka-holding man in front of a surprised Zoro, so he grabbed the man and took him away into an alleyway where he managed to land. The boy stood up and laughed and looked at the man that was in his grasp and laughed happily. That was exciting, wasn't it? He then let the man fall as he got out of the alleyway, and saw Mr. 9, who was now standing in front of him holding two bats. The boy looked at him bored as he knew that this fight will be for all intents and purposes shortly lived. The man attacked Luffy as he swung the bats, hot-blooded gusty bat. The boy allowed the hit to connect on his face, making Mr. 9 smile as he said, "Yes, I managed to take him out." The boy calmly replied, "No, not really. You see, I'm a rubber man, so physical blows can't really work on me." The boy then moved the bat from his face as the man stepped away in fear. Luffy then punched the man so hard in the gut, it caused him to pass out from the pain. The boy sighed as he walked away looking for more people to fight, but stopped as he heard nothing and carried the man to meet up with Zoro. They needed to tie them anyway so they won't be able to hurt their friends. With Robin, the girl was making her through the alleyways when a bounty hunter jumped in front of her and said, "Give up, girlie. Make this easier for both of us." The man tried to take a step forward but felt something grabbing him from behind. Suddenly, this feeling went through his entire body as disembodied arms held him in his place and began to tighten their grip on him till his back broke and Robin walked away from him. The girl, unlike the boys, found little resistance in her path, as anyone who came across her suffered from a broken back and everlasting nightmares from hearing bones being snapped in half. The girl at some point climbed a huge ladder, allowing bounty hunters to follow her, only for her to push the ladder away, causing scores of her pursuers to fall to the ground yelling in fear as they collided with the hard surface. She then proceeded to jump on them, causing them all to have even more injuries, but she then noticed Ms. Monday throwing a barrel at Zoro, so she grew arms on the woman and dragged her to her as she said, "Let's end this quickly, shall we?" The giant woman roared as she raced toward Robin, but the girl jumped to the side, causing her to smash her head against a wall. The huge woman backed away in a daze but shook her head as she readied herself to fight one more. She suddenly felt that her entire body was glued to the ground. She looked down only to see phantom hands and limbs tying her down. She then felt something grabbing the back of her head. Robin slowly made her toward the huge woman as she said in a very calm voice, "Not so tough now, are we? You know it's really easy for you to fight against someone asleep, but when someone is wide awake, all of you become walking targets." The arm holding her head began to play it back harder. "So tell me now, are you feeling fear?" The woman was sweating bullets as Robin said, "Suis fleur." Snap, the sound of bone breaking could be heard from miles away. The girl walked for a moment before saying, "Come out, princess. I know that you're hiding behind the wall. I promise that I mean no harm to you, even though you tried to harm me and my friends." Vivi then emerged from behind a wall with a huge duck-looking creature as she said, "Please don't expose. I only did this for my country. If you want money, I'll give lots of it, but don't tell anyone my secret. All of my hard work will be for nothing." Robin frowned as she walked to the girl and hugged her, saying, "I promise that I truly mean no harm to you. And when I offered my help, it was out of the goodness of my heart, and I wasn't planning on exploiting you or anything." The girl still remembers when she fought for her small home island. Vivi looked at her and asked, "Really?" She wiped away some tears with Robin nodding her head with a gentle smile. The girl was now more relaxed as Robin allowed her to sit on the ground and told her to take it easy. When the princess finally managed to calm, Robin let go of her and asked, "Are you better now?" The princess nodded her head. "Good, good," Robin said absent-mindedly. "Now let's talk about what is happening in your country so I can help you in any way possible." The blue-haired agreed as she stood up and began to walk, confusing Robin. The princess looked at her and said, "If you truly want to hear my story, you might as well meet my accomplice in this whole matter. He will be better than me at explaining these types of things. I was never for explaining stuff or clarifying them." Both girls didn't notice two things. One was a certain orange-haired girl who had bellies in her eyes, and an otter and a vulture sitting in the house watching them. Back with Zoro, the man was looking at two idiots, as he would call them. One of them was a girl wearing a lemon-themed dress, a man wearing a red coat. The two looked at him and the woman laughed, with the man asking, "This question that you asked is the one we should be asking you. Who the heck are you?" The man shook his head as he said, "You know what, forget it. He suddenly began picking in his nose as flicked a booger at Zoro, who was beyond disgusted and weirded out by this. Zoro then yelled, "What the foo?" He was then engulfed in an explosion that sent him flying toward a house nearby. The duo looked at him and the man said, "Well, that wasn't too hard, was it?" Agarapoy looked at them and asked with a strained frown, "Mr. Five and Ms. Valentine, what are you doing here? Did you come here to mock us for failing to capture the pirates?" The woman now known as Ms. Valentine said with a smile, "Well, laughing at you is one of the things that I was sent to do." Agarapoy lifted himself as he looked at them. "Well, since you are here, you can help us take out the pirates. You already took one out, and I'm sure that you can help me take out the others." He was silenced by Ms. Valentine laughing at him while Mr. Five sneered at him. The bomb man asked, "Do you think that we came here to joke around or play with the likes of you? We came here on a very important mission," he said as a vulture came down from the sky and handed him a small piece of paper. The man read it and smiled. "You see, our boss noticed some of our employees lurking around his base and following the unluckies around when they went to report to him or take missions. And that member actually managed to find his secret out. You know that our organization creed is secrecy." The man rubbed his chin as he began to notice that the curly-haired man began to sweat a little. Ms. Valentine carried on. As any hard-working man running an organization, he began a little investigation that led him to something important. He discovered that there was a spy in the organization. He didn't know how, since the spy was very clever in covering his tracks, but imagine his surprise when one of the numbered agents looked exactly like a missing princess of a certain nation. The man meanwhile was breathing heavily, getting more nervous by the minute. The bomb man then said, "So he sent us here to make sure that we catch the spy and any possible accomplice she has red-handed. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that you look like the head of the guards of Alabasta, Igaram." The man jumped up from his position yelling, "I won't allow you to harm Princess Vivi." He then opened fire at them, which they dodged as the bomb man said, "Double nose cannon." He then sent 2 boogers toward Igaram, injuring him heavily as Ms. Valentine said, "Now sit tight here while we go bring the princess." They two then walked away from the injured man, leaving him on the ground. The man wondered if all hope was lost, when suddenly Zoro came out of the wreckage of the house. He was sent into drinking a bottle of sake. "Man, that was some good," Zoro said. Igaram looked up at him and asked, "You're still alive?" Zoro shrugged as he continued drinking the booze and said, "That attack never really affected me, but I found a good bottle of booze." Igaram crawled over to him. "Please help protect the princess. I'll give you anything that you wish off, but please keep Princess Vivi safe." Zoro looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "Weren't you trying to kill us just a moment ago? Why on earth would I want to do anything with you?" The man began to panic as he added, "I'm terribly sorry for what I've done, but please save the princess. She's only doing as I told her. She needs to be saved so that our kingdom can be saved." "Leave my leg alone, damn it," Zoro yelled. "You still haven't given me a good reason why should I help you." "Well, I can help you with that." They all looked up and saw Nami sitting there with a huge grin on her face as she added, "But our help will come with a small fee that is totally reasonable. After all, we are saving a princess and transporting her back to her country." Igaram smiled. "Yes, name your price, my fair lady, and it shall be yours." Nami tipped her chin and said, "Well, I think that bellies would do nicely." The man nodded his head happily till he registered the price and gasped in horror as he said, "What about that as a reasonable price? I'm sure we can manage something, but that's way too high." "So you're saying that you don't want the princess to be safe and back in her kingdom?" The man began to sweat and bit his nails as he closed his eyes. He finally replied, "How about that you talk with the king when the mission is done?" The girl hummed for a bit before nodding her head as the man sighed and passed out from his injuries. Nami looked at Zoro and said, "Well, you heard the man, you have a princess to go and protect, so get to it." Zoro stood there for a moment, barely registering what she said, till he asked, "And why should I go when you're the one who made the deal?" The answer to his question was a swift punch to the head, causing him to faceplant into the ground as Nami was still smiling at him. The girl asked, "Does this answer your question, or do you need more presentation?" The man lifted his head from the ground and glared at Nami as he said, "I ain't going to do it." He crossed his arms as Nami had a huge Cheshire grin spread across her face. The girl walked around him for a bit and said, "And here I thought I can take you to this house I found with the tastiest booze ever, but it appears that I'll just have to myself." The man looked at her and asked, "How good are we talking about here?" The girl gave him a thumbs up, to which the man jumped up quickly and said, "Well, I think that I can help you just a bit, but I expect to see those booze bottles when I come back here." The man stood up and he ran away to catch up with the 2 clowns that left earlier as Nami said with a huge grin on her face, "What a sucker, I love money so much. I'm going to be rich." Her eyes suddenly turned into belly signs. The girl then walked around as she entered the people's homes and said, "I hope I can find something worth my time. Most of the homes I hit were dirt poor." Back with Robin and Vivi, Robin looked at Vivi and said, "So you had an accomplice all this time to help you run things smoothly?" The princess nodded her head. "I couldn't do it alone back then, so I needed help, so the head of our guard volunteered to go with me on the mission." "Impressive, princess, but I still don't get it. Why would you want me alive? if you thought that I was threatening your plans." Vivi looked at her confused till she remembered that the boss said that he needed Robin alive. Vivi replied, "That wasn't me. The boss himself truly wants you alive. I have no idea though." Robin hummed, wondering what value she might be to the boss, as someone yelled, "Robin." She looked and saw Luffy approaching them. Vivi panicked as she saw the downed form of Mr. 9 on Luffy's shoulder. Luffy looked at Vivi before turning to Robin. "What's with her? Or better yet, what is she doing with you?" Vivi was worried that Luffy might not help her, as Robin said. Robin replied quickly, "She's my friend and she needs our help." The boy blinked for a moment, dropping the unconscious Mr. 9 as he said, "Okay, so when do we help her?" Vivi's widened at how easily he was convinced, but then remembered that they were a couple and attributed it to that. They began to walk together to meet Zoro. Midway through their walk, Luffy suddenly bolted, quickly grabbing both Robin and Vivi in time to avoid an explosion. The boy looked up in anger as he said, "Hey, why did you do that? You almost hit us, you damn jerk." Mr. 5 then came out of the shadows and said, "I'm sorry. I'll just have to make sure to hit you next time. I promise that I won't make the same mistake once again." Robin then grabbed Vivi's hand and used her powers to yank them to safety as something crashed where they were standing. Both looked at the location as the smoke cleared, with Ms. Valentine standing there with a huge grin on her face. "Soon, so I can capture both of you." Luffy then said, "Both of you go away. I'll handle this." Vivi tried to interject, but Robin grabbed and ran away with her as Mr. 5 flicked a booger toward them. But Luffy jumped in the way and blocked it. The boy jumped toward the man as he stretched his leg back and kicked him with a huge force, but as the man was sent away, Luffy exploded. The boy didn't carry as he landed on the ground, with Ms. Valentine coming from behind him and seeing, "I ate the kilo fruit, so that means I can increase my weight. How about we see how you can handle a ton sent straight on your head?" The girl crashed on him and smiled, but Luffy shocked her by lifting her over his head and throwing her toward his partner, who dodged just in time to avoid being crushed by her. Luffy then darted forward and kicked her in the stomach, and used her as a shield to protect himself from Mr. 5's booger. He then punched Mr. 5 in the face, knocking him to the ground. Luffy then kicked the girl in her gut and sent her to the ground. The two numbers looked at each other, and 5 said, "I think we should split up. This way I can handle the brat while you go and capture the girls." The woman nodded as they began their plan. The woman said, "I'd love to play with you both, but I have something to do, so goodbye." She jumped in the air as Luffy jumped after trying to intercept, but Mr. 5 threw an explosive booger toward him, causing him to fall to the ground. The boy stood back up and glared at Mr. 5, but he knew that he had to stop Ms. Valentine first. He then launched himself once more, but unlike last when he managed to catch Ms. Valentine, as he said, "Hey, wait lady, try this on for size." He stretched both his arms back as he said, "Gum gum bazooka." The boy hit her straight in the gut, sending her to the ground. In the meantime, Mr. 5 caught up to his partner, who was groaning in pain, and saw the boy falling, so he yelled, "It's over, kid. Die." He tried to send 2 flying boogers, but he suddenly felt a horrible pain traveling through his body. He looked in front of him to see Zoro standing there with a smirk as he said, "I'm sorry that I'm a little for the festival, but better late than never, I suppose." He then took a stance and aimed at Mr. 5 and said, "Onigiri." He slashed the man, causing him to pass out from the pain as Luffy looked at Ms. Valentine and yelled, "Gum gum pistol." Both agents then fell to the ground as Luffy said, "They were weak." Zoro nodded his head as Luffy added, "Let's go met with the others." It only took them a couple of moments till they finally found the girls as Vivi asked them, "What happened? Did you manage to run away from them or make them lose your track?" She then finished tying Igaram's wounds, who excused himself to do something. Luffy shrugged as he said, "No, we beat them. They were kinda weak." Vivi felt shocked about this but shook her head. She then bowed a little in front of them, saying, "On behalf of the nation and country of Alabasta, I sincerely thank you for helping me." Zoro lay down on the ground saying, "You can save the thanks till we manage to bring you back home." He looked at Nami and asked her, "Now where's that booze that you promised me with?" The girl gave him an innocent looking face as she said, "I did, didn't I? Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it was empty when I went there, but don't feel bad. I'm sure you can find plenty more here." Zoro sighed as he expected this, but he hoped as if he was wrong. The girl managed to get him good. He then looked at Vivi and said, "Now, since we're planning to help you, can you at least tell us your story?" Vivi blinked as she said, "Yes, right. I suppose that I owe you guys much. My name is Vivi, the sworn princess of the kingdom of Alabasta. My kingdom for a couple of years was put under huge civil unrest due to unknown reasons. So I went undercover to find out the reason, with the head of guards Igaram following behind me. They did work for 3 years till we finally managed to reach the cause of our plight. The shadow organization known as Baroque Works was the reason for all the trouble my country was going through, along with the man that leads it." Zoro then asked, "Okay, tell us who the leader is." The girl panicked as she began to wave her hands right and left, telling them that doing this will put all of their lives in danger. "That man you speak of is a horrible monster of epic proportions. He's someone who won't hesitate to kill a child. A man would send you to the ends of the earth if you ever found out about his name. Nami then said in relief, thanks for that Vivi, we don't need that type of monster on our back. Robin then said, but we're going to help her, so is it best to know who we're up against? The girl then said, no, even if you're helping me, there's no way I'll tell that the warlord crocodile is the reason behind everything happening to my country. A moment of silence passed till Zoro said, you said his name. Both Nami and Vivi gasped as the former began to strangle the latter, who kept apologizing, saying that she didn't mean it. Nami then turned around and said, well guys, it was nice knowing you, but I'm going away from you before that warlord begins hunting us down. She then heard shuffling and saw an otter and a vulture up a building, with the otter having a sketching board. The little creature then presented to her different pictures of herself and her friends, to which the girl applauded, but suddenly it tried to fly away. Tried being the key word here, since Robin quickly intercepted them, and put the two creatures out of their misery. Robin then said, and now, we can still have the element of surprise on our side. Nami looked at the girl and said, you're a brutal person. Robin moved to defend herself, but Nami stopped her as she said, don't even try to deny it. The raven head pouted as she looked away. Vivi then said, alright, I think this works perfectly. A little bit brutal, but still this is good, so for now all we have to do is go to Alabasta and tell my father what I found, and hopefully I'll be able to prevent any bloodshed. Robin looked at her unconvinced, given that there's no such thing as no bloodshed in a civil war type case, but she can't stop the princess from hoping for the best. Igaram then came around the corner wearing a dress and makeup similar to Vivi, making every male conscious or not seem offended due to the horrid abomination that he transformed into. The man then said, I'll help with that. You see, I'll go to the capital in this dress to lead off any potential pursuers that you may have, princess. The girl walked up to him and hugged him, thanking him profusely. The man then walked away to start his plan as the Straw Hats went to retrieve their other members. An hour later, after Igaram has already departed, everyone was on board, with Usopp and Sanji groaning in anger about being forced away from the island only to receive the Nami treatment. Luffy now yelled, now let's get moving. Vivi then yelled, wait, I still have to get my duck, Curie. Everyone looked at her as she began to tell them how she was with the duck from the moment that she was a child, till Zoro pointed out that it was already on the ship. From there, the ship began to sail to a new island, Dino World. The crew was currently sitting on the deck as Nami explained what happened to both Usopp and Sanji, what happened on the island after they woke up from their induced coma courtesy of Nami's fists of extreme fury. Usopp gasped, sweating a little, that's what happened when we were sleeping. He went silent for a couple of moments before sighing in relief, good thing I was asleep. Sanji let a heart-shaped puff of smoke from his cigarette as he said, I see, it was a mistake on my end to fall for their tricks, but I still can make it up for you now that the sleeping prince is awake. I promise you that I won't allow a fly to come near you. The man then gained a goofy grin looking at Nami. Are you jealous, Nami? The girl merely shook her head while Usopp began to boast about himself. Luffy meanwhile was wondering if he was going to an island that will be filled with snow, while Robin sat peacefully beside him reading from a book as she fed Luffy some snacks Sanji made them. Vivi looked at him and said, well, the Grand Line is quite unusual, so there might be a chance it will snow at some point, but it's rare once you pass the first island. The weather beside Reverse Mountain is dedicated by the 7 magnetic fields, so that's why it was a bit wacky, so to speak, but we can't let our guard down since anything could happen here. The boys then banded together as they cheered on, saying that they were ready for anything, but this caused Vivi to become angry a little due to the childish way that they were handling things. Vivi looked at Robin, who was enjoying a drink that Sanji handed to her, and said, how can you be so calm when they're all this? Aren't you worried? The girl shook her head, no, not really. I just let them have their fun, since when it counts they become really serious. Nami carried on, yeah, they're hard workers when we encounter anything too serious. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. Didn't you see them when you first arrived on the boat? Vivi calmed down, acknowledging what the girls said, but couldn't help feeling worried that they might be caught off guard and be destroyed by the sea. She looked down and saw them all drinking juice, including her duck. She suddenly felt relaxed a little. Nami smiled, being on this ship sure is relaxing, isn't it? The girl continued to drink her drink. Vivi grabbed a cup and began to drink it as she replied, yeah, I think so. It's quite relaxing. Sanji looked over the rails and saw something in the distance. He got closer, which made him say, hey guys, look. Everyone looked in the direction he was pointing at. I think it's a dolphin. The dolphin got closer and jumped over the ship, startling everyone due to its huge size, causing the rubber boy to order an escape. The crew spent 2 days sailing at sea till Robin set up from the crow's nest, land on the horizon. Nami looked at her log pose and said, yep, we're going in the right direction. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to our next island on the Grand Line. The crew began to cheer in happiness as the ship entered the island, but Vivi warned, you should all be careful. We don't know what this island might hold for us, so we can't let our guard down. Usopp paled considerably, saying, are you saying that we might encounter monsters on this island? The boy began to shiver as held onto Sanji for dear life, shaking him. The man kicked the long-nosed boy away, saying, how should I know? He shook his head saying, I hope this island has some animals because we need to resupply. I think I'll go hunting or maybe send Mosshead to do it since he's useless as a rock. The green-haired man heard him, and a vein throbbed on his forehead as he attacked Sanji, and the two began to fight each other till Robin separated them from each other saying, what Vivi said is right. Just from looking at this island, I can tell that human civilization hasn't touched and it might hold unforeseen dangers including a huge variety of animals due to its tropical nature, so best for you guys to be on your best behavior. The two disengaged from each other as Nami and Robin observed the greenery and said, there are a lot of types of plants here that we don't recognize from any of our books. They then heard a loud screech coming from above them, making Nami panic a little bit as Sanji told her not to worry since he will protect her in his spaghetti form. Suddenly, a feathered lizard flew in the air above them, making Nami pale considerably as she asked, is that a flying dinosaur? Suddenly a louder voice came from the jungle making her yell, this place isn't going to be your average jungle. A huge tiger then came out of the woods covered in blood and died right in front of them, making Nami and Usopp tremble in fear knowing that they are currently in the same domain as the monster that killed that tiger. Nami gulped. Alright everyone, please stay calm. Let's just wait till the log pose resets itself and we'll head back to our course to Alabasta. The sound of someone tapping his foot caught her attention as Luffy said, Sanji, make me lunch. I'm going on an adventure. The blonde man walked away to begin making the food as Nami tried to persuade Luffy not to do it, but her protests fell on deaf ears. The girl looked at Robin who was holding a bento and smiling as she said, we're all set, Luffy. But I have something to do before we leave. The woman then walked away as Luffy waited for her. Vivi then came and said, can I go with you too? I really want to see the island. The boy smiled, nodding his head as Nami asked her shocked, you too? The blue-haired girl smiled, I also want to have an adventure, plus Car will protect me, the girl said, taking her duck off guard as it shivered to shake its head. Moments later, everything was ready, but Robin didn't come. Luffy was about to go, but Robin eventually came out from the storage of the ship with phantom arms carrying a barrel of rum. The girl then threw it off board, catching everyone off guard as Sanji asked, Robin Schwan, may I know why you threw an entire barrel of rum off board? The girl calmly replied, well, I saw it was open unlike the rest of the barrels and it smelt funny, so I was afraid that it had a rat entering it and I didn't want any of us getting sick from drinking from it. The man sighed, alright, but can you next time tell me so I can check it? I really hate seeing food or supplies getting wasted or thrown away. The girl nodded her head as she, Vivi, Luffy, and Vivi's duck began marching together inside the dense forest. Zoro then jumped from the ship to the land as he said, well, I'll go hunt those animals you told me to, shitty cook. I kinda understand why you asked me given that you can't hunt a frog. This caused Sanji to jump to Zoro saying, are you implying that I can't hunt animals? Or that you're going to hunt better than me? Zoro replied with a smirk, turns out you do have a brain, arrow cook. Now, let me be. The man walked away only for Sanji to yell, wait right there. You know what, I'll go hunting and bring even bigger prey than whatever tiny critter you might bring. Zoro scoffed, I'd like to see you trying that. Sanji bit his cigarette and walked away, you'll see, you damned mosshead. All the while, Nami and Usopp were left alone on the boat crying in fear given that they lost all the muscle the ship had. The girl and the boy then sat alone, but Nami then remembered something about reading about an island that fit the current specifications regarding the one they were in. With Luffy and his group, the boy was having the time of his life exploring the place with Robin while Vivi stayed in the back trying to be the voice of reason. Luffy then stretched his arms grabbing a fruit, hey Robin, Vivi, look at this, doesn't it look delicious? Robin smiled at him saying, indeed, when we get back, I'll ask Sanji to make a fruit salad using it. The boy cheered happily as Vivi heard something approaching them. The boy then grabbed something and handed it to Vivi. It looked like an ancient, shook her head. Shouldn't they be extinct at this point? Robin on the other hand looked at it with awe and wonder, so fantastic. To think that they still exist to this day. I wonder if they also have a. The girl was cut off as a giant shadow loomed over them. Everyone looked to see a huge dinosaur eating the treetops, causing Vivi and her duck to panic while Robin and Luffy were smiling. Vivi began to stutter, that's a dinosaur. Robin only nodded her head with a huge grin. Vivi said, well, I suppose that it's quite logical that islands like this exist given that some islands are extremely futuristic. I guess that there are also islands that are prehistoric where time froze and they couldn't evolve any further. The girl was cut off by Luffy asking Robin, wanna ride it? The girl nodded her head quickly with a smile as Luffy grabbed her and slingshot them toward the behemoth with Vivi telling them to stop. Back with Nami, the girl found the book she was looking for. She finally knew why the island looked so familiar. She read about it once and it was called Little Garden, due to the giants that inhabited and everything was little compared to them. Nami walked to the deck but was frozen by the sight she saw. In front of them, there was a giant of epic proportions causing Usopp to say, we're in trouble on this island. The giant looked down at them and said, excuse my intrusion, but do you have any rum? Usopp replied while shivering, yeah, I think we have some in the lower dock. The giant smiled at them. Well, that's splendid. Can I have some? The giant then screamed as he looked behind him only to see a T-Rex biting his rear. Both Usopp and Nami cried silently as they said, there are dinosaurs on this island. The giant swung his axe and decapitated the beast in one blow, making both Nami and Usopp fall to the ground as he yelled, I'm Brogy, the mightiest warrior of Elbaf. He grabbed the dinosaur's head and presented them to the two, saying, I have some meat if you want to trade it with rum. He noticed the two laying on the ground, so he said, it's decided that I will have you two as guests. Meanwhile, the two were silently crying, wondering where are the muscles of the crew when they need them. Somewhere in the dense forest, Sanji was currently fighting a T-Rex while Zoro was fighting a Triceratops. Back with Luffy, he was standing with Robin on top of the giant beast as they looked at the sky, with Luffy saying, isn't this awesome, Robin? The girl nodded with a happy face as she pointed at something. Look, I see volcanoes over there, and also giant skulls. From down on the ground, Vivi yelled at both of them, get down. This thing may seem docile, but it can still hurt at the end of the day. Luffy yelled back, don't worry, I can handle it and it didn't see us yet. The moment he said that, the dinosaur moved its head and began to try and shake them off, but Luffy grabbed Robin and they both landed safely to witness a new giant kill the dinosaur. Car and Vivi screamed in fear, or the duck's case quacked from fear, while Robin and Luffy faced him head-on with huge grins on their face. Vivi mentally wondered if coming with those pirates was her best choice after all. The giant laughed, G-E-G-Y-A-G-Y-A-G-Y-A. He then looked down at both Luffy and Robin, saying, well, aren't you two a lively bunch? I haven't had guests to my home in a while. Luffy looked with awe at him. Whoa, you're so cool. Are you a huge human or a giant? Robin only giggled from the side, saying, Luffy, no human could ever hope to reach these heights. I'm sure he's a giant, though I'm integrated if he's from Elbaf or not. The giant looked shocked. You heard about Elbaf, young lady. Most people think it's an island of myth such as One Piece. The giant human then introduced himself. I'm Dory, Elbaf's strongest warrior. Please let's go to my home so we can eat together. Luffy nodded his head as he said, but you need to take our friend. She's also with us, he said, pointing at Vivi, who shrieked in terror from the giant's sight. The blue-haired girl was sweating heavily as she looked at Dory. This is a giant. This is the first time I see one of them in real life, but I heard many rumors about them. She gulped as he reached down and picked her up with a catatonic duck, and began moving. Back with Usopp and Nami, they sat in front of a fire waiting for the food to be finished while they stared at Brogy. They didn't dare to move their eyes from him for fear that he might kill them. Moments later, the giant waved his hand, taking out the fire as the piece of meat was smoking, with the giant gesturing to it, saying, well folks, let's dig in and eat. Both Nami and Usopp said at the same time, thanks, but we're not that hungry. They were currently observing all the skeletons that were around them, making them feel extremely uneasy. The giant smiled once more. Please, there's no need for modesty. Eat to your heart's desire. Dinosaur meat is really delicious around this time of the year. Nami and Usopp once again declined his offer, afraid that they might become giant food today. The giant shrugged as he picked up the piece of meat and took a huge bite out of it. Nami summoned her courage as she asked him, Mr. Giant, if you don't mind us asking. The giant looked at her, making her skin crawl. How long does it take for a log pose to set on Little Garden? The giant replied quickly, 1 full year. Both Nami and Usopp fell to the ground as their souls left their bodies, knowing this new piece of information. Back with Dory's group, both Luffy and the giant were happily eating each other's food. Both of the men were amused with each other. Luffy found Dory to be amazing as a giant, while Dory found Luffy to be a funny human being. Robin meanwhile was eating a piece of dinosaur meat. She had to admit that it was very tasty. As for the princess, she was looking at the entire scene with a huge sweat drop, finding it strange that Dory and Luffy befriended each other rather quickly, till Robin said, Luffy can make friends with anyone, I suppose. I wouldn't be shocked if he made friends with his mortal enemies one day. Vivi nodded her head as Robin asked the giant, Mr. Dory, how come you live here alone? Don't you have someone waiting for you in your home? The giant smiled. Well, you see, little girlie, I don't live on this island alone. I live with another giant named Brogy, and we can't go back to our home until we settle an argument of ours. Vivi tilted her head. What does this argument has with you not being able to go back to your home? Did you both hurt someone and were exiled from Elbaf? The giant shook his head. No, we didn't, but our case has something to do with the rules of Elbaf. You see, on our island once two giants argue that they can't solve, they must leave the village and ask for our god Elbaf's help because we see him as a just ruler. Everyone looked at him in awe, especially Robin, who was writing little notes on the culture of Elbaf. Brogy and I argued, so we left Elbaf and made this island our battlefield, but the thing is, everyone looked at him waiting to hear what he had to see. It's been 100 years and we still didn't finish our argument of ours or settled it. Luffy gasped in shock. You've been fighting for 100 years? Dory replied, well, we giants live easily 3 times more than humans. This is nothing to us in the long run. Vivi was completely mortified that they actually spent 100 years fighting among each other as she asked, Even if you live longer, isn't fighting 100 years a little too much? And what could be so important that you would fight for so long? One of the volcanoes that Robin saw earlier then erupted as Dory stood up and walked away from them to his sword. Well, I guess it's time again. The giant grabbed the weapon and began to move to the middle of the island. Luffy asked, "What happened? Why are you going away?" The giant stopped for a moment before replying, "You see, Brogy and I agreed that the middle's a single that a new match has begun." Vivi screamed at him, "Stop. Whatever this argument is, it couldn't have possibly driven you to fight each other for over 100 years in an attempt to kill one another." Luffy quickly silenced the girl, putting a hand on her mouth saying, "Be quiet. This isn't about the argument anymore. This is about their pride." Robin meanwhile rolled her eyes at the notion. While she didn't have anything against the giants acting under their rules and principles, she still couldn't get why men get so hang over their pride once they start a fight. Luffy and Ace were no exception to this as she saw them fight for stupid things over and over again. Dory nodded his head. "What the boy said is true. This right now is about our pride." Dory lifted his sword and rushed toward Brogy, who lifted his axe and rushed toward the former. Brogy then said, "As for the reason which caused our 100-year squabble," Dory carried on, "we kinda forgot," and with that the two giants fought with each other. Luffy then laid down as he said, "Well, I'm beat. Their food is just too huge." The two giants then began their duel as both their axe and sword clashed with each other, making everyone except Luffy and Robin tremble in fear. Dory blocked a swing from Brogy's axe by using his shield, pushing away the other giant as he thrusted his sword toward Brogy, who jumped away, causing the sword to hit the ground, shattering everything around it. Brogy then asked, "Tell Dory, don't you miss our home back at Elbaf? Don't you want to go back home?" Dory replied happily, "Of course, that's why I'll beat you today," and head straight toward Elbaf at once. Brogy. Both of them shrugged toward each other, swinging their weapons. Dory tried to hit Brogy by swinging his vertically down, but the man stopped him with his shield before kicking him back and jumping in the air, bringing his axe down on Dory's helmet. The axe's handle broke as Dory lifted his head. With Usopp and Nami, the orange-haired girl was trembling in fear. Those hits that they are delivering toward each other are directed toward each of their vital points to deliver a quick death with one hit. It's so terrifying. Usopp said in fear, "Don't tell that they've been fighting for years like this. It's so terrifying." Nami shook her head. "You know what? This could be to our advantage. We could use this as a smokescreen for our escape. Come on, Usopp, let's get moving." The boy didn't respond, but he remained plastered where he was standing and said, "Wow. This is really cool, once you understand what's happening." The girl then grabbed Usopp. "Usopp, you can fanboy over them later, when we sail away." The girl freed himself from the girl. "You don't get it, do you? This is a true warrior's duel." He remembered Brogy's words. Even without a reason, they keep fighting to preserve their honor and pride. Nami replied with a critical eye. "Pride? Honor? This seems more like a nuisance if you ask me." The boy replied, "You're just dumb. This is a thing between men, and you won't ever get it." Nami raised an eyebrow. "What on Kami's green earth are you saying?" The boy shook his head. "Let me explain." The girl crossed her arms. "Imagine that there's a flag in each of their hearts, and each of them is willing to protect this flag with their lives. They don't want their flags to be broken, so that's why they fight for so long." The boy clenched his fist, because this is a true fight between men, a battle of pride between two warriors. Nami sighed in exasperation as she began to walk away. "You know something, I don't care about the fight, so I'm just going back to the ship." Usopp said, "Well, I'm staying. This is the opportunity that I've been waiting for to become a true warrior of the sea. I need to learn from them how to be a proud warrior." The girl looked at Usopp and sat down beside him. "So what I get from all of this pride talk is that you want to become a giant one day." The boy fell onto his face and stood back up angry. "Did nothing of what I said to make its way into your head?" He then shook his head. "But never mind that. If there's actually a village of giants, I'll make sure to visit it one day." Nami looked at him and said, yeah, and I'm sure that there is an island in the sky full of angel people and some kind of self-proclaimed thunder god." The boy shivered and looked at her, pissed off. "Did you have to jinx us like that? Don't you what happens when you tempt fate like this? Or say something along the lines of what the worst that could probably happen. Newsflash. The worst actually happens." The girl rolled her eyes and looked away. Back with Dory and Brogy, the giants were delivering heavy blows to each other and finally broke their weapons, causing them to be thrown away as they resorted to fist fighting. At last, they both hit each other with their shields and flew down knocked out. Brogy first said, 73466 fights, Dory carried on, and 73,466. Both of them proclaimed, ties. Both of the giants fell and hit the ground, but soon they both began to laugh heavily. Brogy said with a laugh, "Gababa, hey Dory, I have some rum from the guests that I have back at my home. Do you want some?" Dory replied, "Excellent, I haven't had some good rum for a while now. Give me some okay. Gegya. With Luffy and his group, the giant returned to them after his fight with a couple of barrels of rum and set them down on the ground. The giant said, "I have to ask you. Do you know if there are other humans on this island because my friend Brogy has some human guests? Robin looked at him. What do they look like? The giant tapped his chin. Well, one of them has a long nose and the other has orange hair. Does that ring any bells with you guys? Robin nodded her head. Well, those are Nami and Usopp. So much for not wanting to leave the ship. She giggled into her hand. I guess they wanted to have an adventure, but only needed a small push. The giant laughed as he cracked open one of the barrels and drank it whole. Well, I guess I have to thank you for the rum as well. And, this is some good stuff. Vivi interjected. Well, I'm sorry to butt in your conservation, but earlier you said it takes 1 full year to have a log pose set. Is that true? The giant cracked open another barrel and began to drink from it. Well, I'm sorry little missy, but that's the truth. Haven't you seen the skeletons of people lying around these parts? Most humans can't manage to survive a year given the harsh condition of this island. The man laughed as he reached for another barrel and drank from it. You see, some are eaten by the dinosaurs, some from diseases, starvation, heat waves, and many more, but eventually they die. Vivi grabbed her head in depression as she wondered what will happen to her country should she stay away for a year. Everything could be lost if she doesn't head there right away. Luffy looked at him and asked, isn't there another way? The man told him that he could give him an enteral pose, which was a compass that directed people toward one specific island. However, it will direct them toward his home island Elbaf. Vivi only sighed since it won't help her at all. The man lifted the final barrel, but Robin noticed that it was soaking wet, causing her to yell, Dory, don't drink from that barrel, it's dangerous. The giant stopped and put the barrel down and said, why is that little one? This barrel, the girl explained, I threw it off the ship earlier today because I found its top opened, and I was afraid that a rat found its way on the ship and may have entered it, so I didn't want my teammates to get sick. It's even soaking wet like it was in the water. The giant rubbed his chin. I see, this does seem very suspicious if you ask me. Robin looked at Luffy and said, can you open it? The boy nodded his head and stretched his arms to the lid. The moment he opened it, a huge explosion formed from it, taking everyone off guard. Back with Usopp, he was currently talking with Emma, becoming a brave warrior of the sea. The giant rubbed the top of his head, brave warrior of the sea. Usopp hummed an affirmation, it's something I want to become like you too in the future. The giant tilted his head a little, thinking about what the boy said, you want to become a giant? This caused Nami to laugh a little as Usopp glared at her. The boy shook his head quickly, saying, that's not what I meant. I mean, I want to become a proud and honorable warrior like you and the rest of the warriors of Elbaf. The giant laughed, we giants live much longer than you humans, so all that we want is to have an honorable death. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing more precious than someone's pride. That's what we warriors of Elbaf fight for. The long-nosed boy smiled, so pride is your treasure. Back with Luffy, the boy stumbled back from the huge explosion, falling onto his back. Even though he was far away, the explosion was still strong enough to reach him, but luckily it didn't harm him too much. Robin was quickly by Luffy's side, helping him up. Luffy, are you alright? Are you injured? Do we need to take you back to the ship? Vivi stood beside them, worried for the boy as he jumped back up and said, it's nothing, I'm fine. Vivi asked, how could have put an explosion inside of that barrel? Do you think it was the other giant? She was then grabbed by Luffy, who told her that it couldn't have been since they were fighting forever. Dory then said, it can't be you people since you clearly warned about the barrel, so it must be one of the two there. Everyone was now worried for their friend's safety. Robin quickly took charge. Dory, we can assure you that our crewmates aren't responsible for this. The giant looked at her and asked with clear anger in his voice, and how can you be so sure of this? It can't be Brogy and it ain't you people, so it must be them. Robin explained further, but none of us have the power to cause things to explode. My devil fruit allows me to make copies of my limbs, while Luffy is made out of rubber. My other crewmates are simply human without devil fruit powers. The giant hummed for a bit considering this point, but that's when Luffy spoke. Hey Robin, wasn't one of the guys that we fought back at the Cactus Island an explosion person? What was his name? Vivi's eyes widened. Do you mean Mr. 5? The girl shivered in fear, wondering what were they doing all the way here. Didn't they defeat them back in Whiskey Peak? Yeah, Luffy put a fist in his hand. He said that he ate the explosion fruit, him an explosion human. He looked at the giant and said, here you go, Dory, you have your man. It wasn't one of us. He stopped for a little before saying, that means that they targeted you, but why? The giant also wondered why, but Robin asked him, Dory, did you ever have a bounty on your head? These people are bounty hunters in the first place, so it might explain why they came after you if you had a bounty on your head. The giant nodded his head. Well, I do have a bounty on my head of around 100 million berries, but it was decades ago. The giant stood up and said, that means we have to find the intruders since they're still out and about. I need to punish them for trying to interfere in our fight. Somewhere deep within the forest, a dinosaur bit a house made entirely out of wax, causing its teeth to break. It tried one more time, but it only gained more pain. Move out of my way, you dumb lizard, before I end you completely, an annoyed Mr. 5 said as Ms. Valentine told him, leave that to me. The woman leapt into the air and increased her weight, slamming down on the dinosaur, killing it quickly. The two proceeded to enter the house. The man inside the house looked at them. Back so soon? So how was the mission? Mr. 5 replied, it was a success. I heard the explosion and the giant must be down by now. But tell me what you're doing here, Mr. 3. I had to see that you're really talented to build a house in the middle of nowhere. But know this, I won't allow you to interfere with my mission. Ms. Valentine replied, yeah, we will catch those pirates. Luckily for them, since the unluckies were out of the picture, there was a missing loop in communication, so their boss was under the impression that they arrived too late to the island and the princess and her bodyguard have already gone AWOL, leaving their assigned partners knocked out. Mr. 3 looked at them and said, do I look like I care? Going on forward, you work for me. Whether you find them or not, you're weak. The two yelled at him for the insult only for him to calmly reply, you arrived late, you say? Have you ever heard of being professional? When you arrived late, you allowed your enemy to escape, threatening the secrecy of our entire operation. So next, when you're handed an order, do it in time. The man then put his cup of time down and said, but since you're here, I'll give about 30% of the job, but remember, should you refuse, it's disappearing from existence for you too. The man looked at them and said, am I clear, Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine? The two lowered their heads, nodding slowly as Mr. 3 saw their faces and laughed a little. Don't be like that. We have one of those rare occasions where everyone is a victor. Also, we still have two other jobs than the princess. First of them is to get the black-haired girl from the boys' crew, and the second is residing on this very same island. He then put two bounty posters on the table and said, on this island, two giants live here that were once part of a group of giant pirates that wreaked havoc across the seas. I have to thank you both for giving me such an opportunity to capture them. The two agents looked at the bounty posters and their eyes widened. 200 million berries. Mr. 3 said, so, do you now see the big picture? Both agents went silent as the man carried on. Good, so now you will do whatever I ask you to do. Mr. 5 then said, so that's why you told me to put a bomb in the rum, and then forced me to transport the barrel into the giant's collection. Mr. 3 nodded his head saying, if you know how to adapt your strategy, you'll definitely win. That's why the boss gave me his orders days ago. A couple of days earlier, on an island known as Holiday Island, a man wearing a striped t-shirt with a weird hairstyle where his hair resembled the number 3 sat drinking a cup of tea. This is truly relaxing. Don't you agree with me? His partner was a small girl who would appear to a normal person that she's no older than 13 replied, I don't know. I feel that I'm bored, Mr. 3. The man looked at her. Are you saying this because you don't want to work with me? The girl nodded her head, causing the man to frown a little bit as he said, well, why don't enjoy the time we have away from our missions? I mean, this is one of the privileges we have as officers, and also don't call me by my code name. What will people do if they found that I was Mr. 3? The girl who was wearing a hat and a small summer dress said, I'll think about it. The girl was an officer agent known as Ms. Goldenweek. Mr. 3 looked at her and asked, by the way, what is that paper you've been staring at for a couple of hours now? The girl calmly replied, it's a mission that the boss sent us. This caused Mr. 3 to jump and yell, and why didn't you say anything about it? Do you want the boss to have our heads on spears in his front yard? The girl ignored him, reading the paper. It says that two agents arrived too late to collect a suspected traitor and a potential asset from a new pirate grow. The agents are Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine. The man said, such a pity. I wished it was Mr. 2 so that we can be promoted to a higher rank. The man finished his tea as he said, after all, that man is just an overconfident buffoon who has no talent or skills. At the end of the day, no matter how powerful your devil fruit is, without talent you can't even hope to win a simple fight. Mr. 3 then said, that's why brilliant criminals always use their minds. Back to the present, all of the agents heard the sound of a volcano erupting as Mr. 3 said, come on people, let's move this show on the road. We have 3 objectives we need to carry out today. Back with the giants, Brogy stood up and went to fight as he told Usopp and Nami that they shouldn't be worried about his injuries. Dory on the other hand looked at the humans and said, as much as I wish to go and find those who tried to dishonor me, I have a duty to fulfill. Can one of you watch the fight so that no one interferes with it? Luffy then jumped up with a smile as he said, I'd be honored to watch you two fight it out. The giant nodded his head as he went to fight his rival, not knowing that things are about to get a whole lot more complicated from this point forward. Mr. 3 and Ms. Goldenweek. In the candle house, Mr. 3 sat with his cohorts as they began to plan. So now, let's put a ground basis for the plan. We first need to understand our targets so they can't catch us by surprise. The man then pointed at Luffy's and Robin's bounty posters. The boss, as I said earlier, wants the girl to be caught alive and delivered to him for some reason, so under no circumstances is she to be harmed, or else we'll be the ones getting it and being killed. His partner and the 2 agents working with him nodding their heads. The man added, the boy on the other hand is fair game, so you can do whatever you want to him. The others nodded their heads once again, although the 2 other agents were gritting their teeth. The man then said, now since that is out of the way, I need you two to tell me how many people know the boss's secret. I mean, how many people did the bounty hunters tell you about that were present on Whiskey Peak? The two gulped since they only knew the ones they saw. The Mr. 5 couple began to explain and describe the people they saw while Ms. Goldenweek drew them. When she was finally finished, she presented 4 sketches of Zoro, Luffy, Robin, and Nami. The agents already knew what Vivi looked like since they saw her from time to time even if she didn't see them. The man then clasped his hands together as he leaned backward. He then said, "Alright, now I have the perfect plan." He looked as he heard fighting coming from outside. Concentration is an important thing in a fight, so the bomb that you used will have its effect on Dory. The man looked at his subordinates. Right now, the giant is trying to fight with his other partner, so he's going to be distracted and will slip. So that's why we will take down Dory first since he's already weakened at this point. After that, we'll take care of Bragi. He then looked at the picture of Zoro and said, "We'll also deal with the kids who knew the boss's plans." He then began to work on something, beginning with him. Everyone looked at him as he said, "I have a strong principle that believes in evasion to defeat their enemies. My plans can take out my enemies without me even moving a finger." Back with Luffy, the boy sat on Dory's shoulder as he brought him to where he and Bragi were going to fight. The rubber boy looked at the giant and said, "Don't worry, Mr. Giant. I'll make sure that no one interferes with your fight with your friend." The giant chuckled. "Thank you for that, my friend. I don't want my win against Bragi to be a fake one. If I win, it has to be by the hands of the gods and by my skills." Luffy nodded his head agreeing with the giant as he saw the other one coming. Dory lifted Luffy and put him on a tree nearby and said, "I trust with this, my friend." Bragi yelled, "Dory, are you ready for defeat? I'm sure I'm burning up to kick into next century." Dory then replied, "Not a fat chance, Bragi, but before we fight, I have to tell you something important." The other giant stopped and listened to his friend and competitor. "It appears that there are other people on the island expect us and our human friends. Those people were also trying to interfere with our fight." The other giant gasped. He then said in anger, "How dare they? Don't they know how important this fight is?" The giant looked at his friend's eyes. "We have to find them, but first we two," the giant lifted his sword, "finish this match of ours." Dory laughed, "Of course, why did you think I brought this little human with me? It's so he can watch the fight and make sure that no interferes in it." The other giant chuckled. Bragi nodded his head. "That's a wonderful idea, Dory. If he's one of my friend's crewmates, then he's going to be of great help to us." The man raised his shield as he yelled, "Now, let's begin with our fight." The giant charged toward Dory. Dory smiled, "Get ready to be defeated. Bragi, I will win this time around in our match." Back with Zoro, the man was walking around in the forest dragging around a dead dinosaur. The man sighed for the 7th time as he said, "Now, where was that ship again?" He looked around and saw someone in the distance. He cautiously got closer and smiled once he saw who he was looking at it. The man said, "Oh, Luffy. You kind of freaked out there. I thought there was someone else on this island." The man didn't receive a reply, so he thought that the boy didn't hear him, so he walked closer up to him and said, "Hey, Luffy, are you alright there? Is something wrong?" The man was now standing in front of Luffy, but he suddenly felt something was wrong. The man quickly tried to act, but he was already late as he felt himself be trapped inside something. Back with Usopp and Nami, the boy yelled to Bragi, "Go and beat him, Master Bragi." The giant smiled as he walked away and waved at him with Nami saying, "Are you still going on with this insanity? Come on, let's move and forget about this stupid fight." The boy jumped around as he looked at the girl with an angry look. "Listen here. Don't you dare call this fight stupid. How many times do I have to tell you that this fight is a fight between honorable warriors?" The girl shook her head. Yeah. Now, let's go back to the ship, so we can find a way to regroup with the others and leave this island. I'm not waiting a year for the log pose to finish settling down." The girl turned to walk forward as Usopp said, "Wait a minute now. How are planning to navigate the forest? Both of us can't fight the monsters that lurk in there, so we have to wait here." Nami looked at him and asked, "Aren't you supposed to be a brave warrior of the sea or something?" The girl shook her head confused at the boy. Words. Usopp replied that he had the heart of a brave warrior, but he hoped one day that he can become truly a brave warrior of the sea. The girl rolled her eyes at him as she grabbed him by the scruff of his clothes and began to drag him away. "Okay then. Let's go to the other giant's house where Luffy and his group are sitting at. I hope that he didn't cause too many problems." They both walked, or rather Nami dragged Usopp around, for a small amount of time till they heard the sound of something behind them. Both teens turned around only to be met by a dinosaur. Usopp then jumped in the air from fright and began to run away in fear. "A dinosaur. Somebody please save me." The boy ran so fast that he became a distant dot to the girl who was trying to catch up to him, but she couldn't. The girl stopped for a moment and began to try to catch her breath. The girl looked around as she tried to hide from the dinosaur who was still following Usopp. She then noticed someone leaning against a tree. The girl approached the figure carefully and smiled when she saw Robin. "Robin," Nami put a hand on her chest as she greeted the only girl on the crew beside her till recently. The girl walked up to her saying, "Oh, how I'm glad to see you. Robin, can you plea?" The girl's eyes widened in shock when something began to warp around her body. Usopp stopped running and looked around him as he said, "Nami, where are you?" The boy began to panic and he quickly ran toward Luffy's place. Usopp burst into the scene as he yelled, "Guys, big trouble. Nami is gone. She was eaten by something. I think it was a dinosaur that was following both of us." He looked around for a moment before Usopp noticed the absence of Luffy. "Don't tell me that a dinosaur also managed to get Luffy too? I can't believe this. We're going to die." He was silenced as Robin bloomed a hand on his mouth. The girl then said in the calmest voice possible, "Usopp, please calm down and take deep breaths." The boy did as he was told and the girl then began to explain to him what really happened. The boy was angered that someone even tried to interfere with the giants' fight for a moment only to panic again, this time about Nami and her disappearance. Vivi then said, "What if this was Baroque's work doing? I mean, what if they sent someone else besides the two that EY peak? The explosion that happened here proves that the 5 couple are here on the island, but what if there was someone else pulling the strings?" The boy then returned to the giant subject, causing Robin to blink as he was jumping from one subject to another. The boy was now demanding to know who would dare and interfere with the giants' fight. He looked around him and yelled, "Who dared interfere with their fight?" A voice replied saying, "If you would stop yelling, you would know who." Everyone turned around to see Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine walking up to them as they threw Galu, Vivi's duck, to the ground. The girl gasped in shock as she hadn't noticed her duck's disappearance, making her feel horrible. The girl yelled at him, "What did Galu do to you? He's just an innocent creature." The man rubbed the back of his head and said with a sick smile, "You know that's kinda true, but I wanted him to help us by separating you from the girl and the boy who's now with the giants." He smirked little. "Tell me, did you like my surprise?" Vivi growled, "He's just a duck. How can you be so cruel? You're going to pay for this." Usopp then clenched his fist, "So you're the one who tried to hurt Dory the giant and interfere with their fight?" The boy looked at him with anger and said, "I'm going to take you down." The man raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, tried? I'm sure that I heard a huge explosion and that the giant was taken down." He then looked at Robin, who was glaring at him. "So you're the one who were trying to blow up the inside of the giant?" She clapped her hands slowly in a mocking manner. "Well, I hope to disappoint you, but your plan has failed." Mr. 5's eyebrow twitched as he tried to maintain a calm facade. "Alright then, but that's no problem given who we're working with. I think you heard of him, Princess. Does the name Mr. 3 ring any bells?" The girl's face went white as she heard about the man. He was known to be a real threat given his strong tactics and smart mind, but Robin maintained a clam face. Ms. Valentine looked at her and said, "You, the one with the black hair. You also have to come with us. So why won't be a good girl and surrender yourself slowly?" Robin lifted an eyebrow as she wanted to ask the woman if she lost her marbles. The girl replied, "Why don't you make me?" Ms. Valentine smiled as she said, "Well, that would be my pleasure." The woman got ready to use her power as she opened her umbrella. Mr. 5 looked at Vivi. "Give up, princess. Don't expect these kids to save your life." Robin looked at the blue-haired girl and said, "Princess, please leave and take your duck with you. Usopp and I will take care of those two. I'm sure that they won't take much time to deal with." Usopp looked at Robin as if she'd gone insane, but then remembered that those two tried to interfere with the giants' duel, so he said, "Yeah, Vivi. Take Galu away with you and we'll deal with this." The boy wasn't sure how he was going to do this, but it was better than allowing him to get the girl on any day of the week. The princess looked at them as she clenched her fist. She knew that she had to stay and fight with them, but unlike both of them, she had nothing to help her. She nodded her head as Robin crossed her arms, causing multiple small arms to form and drag Galu to the princess. The princess looked at her injured friend and said, "Galu, are you alright? Can you hear me?" The duck quacked as it stood up slowly in pain. It then ushered Vivi to sit on its back. The princess did this very reluctantly, and the duck quickly sped away. Ms. Valentine said, "Oh no, you don't. You're not going easily out of this." She lowered her weight and jumped into the air, but felt something form around her body. The woman smirked as she said, "Let's see if your hands can feel the pain of being crushed by 1,000 kilos. Robin's eyes widened as the woman quickly increased her weight. The girl managed to dissipate her phantom hands, but she can feel the vibrations in them. Usopp on the other hand looked at his opponent and gulped. Usopp, the brave warrior of the sea, will take you." He then used his slingshot and shot a pellet, special attack, explosive star. The pellet caused a huge explosion to occur as Usopp puffed his chest and exclaimed, "Do you see that? I took him down with one shot." Ms. Valentine laughed at him. "Oh, you cocky idiot. Don't you know that his devil fruit is the explosion fruit? In other words, your little attack." The boy felt something go past him as big explosion occurred behind him, which Robin had to dodge given her close position to it. Was nothing but a mere annoyance. Mr. 5 came out of the smoke with a mildly surprised look. "You're still alive." He scratched his head and added, "I must have missed you with the smoke blocking my view." Usopp then did the one thing that he's good at it. He ran away while screaming at the top of his lungs in fear. Mr. 5 cursed him and ran after him. "Where do you think you're going, you bastard? What happened to all that macho about taking me out with one hit?" Robin looked at her opponent and said, "Shall we continue?" And with that, the fight carried on. The two giants were engrossed in their fight as Bragi lifted his axe and swung it at Dory, who blocked the hit with his shield before he used said item to push Bragi away. The other giant used his sword to try and slash Bragi, but the giant was able to dodge and replied with a swift kick to the abdomen. Dory smirked as he endured the pain and pushed forward, head-butting Bragi, but the other giant pushed him off. Bragi then said, swinging his axe, "This is amazing, Dory. You seem to be fired up today. I bet that your human guests must have given some rum." The giant chuckled a little, or at least, the one that wasn't sabotaged and designed to kill you or hurt you. The other giant laughed, "You can tell just from my fighting. I'm always excited, Bragi." The giant also swung his sword toward Bragi and the two weapons met each other, causing a huge shockwave to envelope the entire area. The strike was so strong that it even caused the two giants to be blasted back from its strength. Dory looked at his friend and said, "This is magnificent, Bragi. But the Elbaf will favor me tonight. I will win this." He then lunged forward, swinging his blade against the other giant with a vertical slash, but Bragi used his shield and held him off. Bragi then pushed Dory and swung his axe, hitting Dory in the helmet, causing a thundering sound to occur. "I don't know what you're talking about, old friend, but the way I see it, Elbaf is favoring me in this fight." Dory backed away as he shook his head and smiled even wider. "Let's finish this fight, Bragi. We still have the intruders to deal with." The other giant nodded his head in agreement. "They have to pay for the crime of interfering in our fight. This should not go unpunished, so why won't you go down already?" Dory laughed, saying, "That won't happen because I want to win this argument that we had for years as much as you want to." The giant swung his blade, but Bragi dodged by jumping to the side and smacking Dory with the shield onto his face. On the sidelines, Luffy was beyond excited as he saw the giants fight. The boy yelled in absolute happiness, "Come on, Dory. Go get him. Be the strongest warrior out there." The boy also looked around to make sure that no one was planning to interfere with their fight. He knew that the people who attacked back on Whiskey Peak were here. He mentally wondered if they brought reinforcements, but shook his head. Even if they were with someone, he was going to kick their ass for interfering with the giants' fight. The boy heard some movement in the bushes, but when he checked it out, he found nothing, so he went back to watching the fight. Mr. 3 was not in a happy mood right now. When he set the 5 pair to put the barrel that was thrown overboard in the collection of barrels that Dory took, it was for the sole reason of weakening the giant and making his work easier. It now appears TS affected by the explosion, but he wasn't even scratched by it. He concluded that the explosion happened even before the giant opened the barrel of rum and drank from it. Sure, he can still capture the giant, but that will now take more work and effort. The man looked at his partner, who seemed bored and calm as always. He always wondered how she can stay as calm as she was 24/7, but that was a question for later. The man coughed in his fist. It would appear that Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine failed to do their part of the job. So I assume that we have now to put more effort into defeating the giants now. The girl remained calm as she nodded her head. She then looked back at the two that they caught with the man glaring at them from inside the candle ball, and the girl probably scared out of her mind. "What are you planning to do with them?" The man smiled. "I'm glad that you asked. I'm going to make a masterpiece out of them. With my powers, I'll make them into perfect human candles." The girl looked at him and said, Sounds boring. Don't you do anything that isn't candle related?" The man fell over from shock as he jumped back, yelling, "What about you? You're always drawing on that paper book of yours. I don't see you doing anything productive." The girl looked at him before making a symbol with her paintbrush, and Mr. 3 flipped over 180 degrees as he said, "Oh, your art is one of the most impressive pieces of artwork that I ever saw." The girl smirked as she wiped the mark on the man. The man fell forward on the ground with a huge thud as he said, "Please never use that on me again. It's really annoying." The girl didn't even honor him by showing any emotions. "Don't insult my work then." The man grumbled as he peeked his head through the bushes and saw one of the children watching the fights with the giants, and he withdrew before Luffy can see him. The man went back to his partner and said, "It appears that one of the children is watching the fight between them." The girl shrugged. "Trap him in a candle as you did with the others." The man shook his head. "Well, this might be my plan, but I'm not 100% sure if he can't break through them, so for that I may need your help to contain him. Hear what is going to happen." The girl looked at him and groaned. "Do I have to do it?" The man fell over and complained about his lazy partner. Back with Luffy, the boy was amazed at the giant's strength. Their fight was one of the most awesome things in his entire life. It was truly a fight of honorable and prideful warriors. The boy looked and then noticed someone lurking around the fighting area, and he was sure that he wasn't one of his friends. The boy used his powers and shot himself toward him using Gum Gum Rocket. The boy landed in front of him as the man said, "Well, look at that. If it isn't the famous East Blue rookie, Straw Hat Luffy. I have to say that I'm quite surprised that I saw you here." The boy put his fists up as he said, I won't allow you interfering with the giant's fight. The boy then stretched his fist back. Gum pistol. The fist came rocketing forward toward Mr. 3, who seemed calm. But he waved his hand and a wall of white material emerged from the ground as Luffy's fist crashed with it, shattering it into pieces. Mr. 3 then said, "Well, you know it's rude not to allow someone to introduce themselves. My name is Mr. 3 and I'm the user of the candle fruit, which makes me a candle human." The boy put both of his fists backward as he yelled, "Gum bazooka." The attack came forward, but it only hit another wax wall. Mr. 3 said, "It seems that you're quite in a hurry of yourself. Clam down or you might not notice what might hit you." The boy quickly felt someone behind him and jumped to the side as he noticed paint fell to the side. He looked only to see a little girl walking from the shadows holding a paintbrush. The boy once again jumped in the air, grabbing a tree branch as he said, "What's a small child doing here?" The girl looked shocked as she said, "I'll have you know that I'm 16 years old, so you can't be that older than me." The girl raised her paintbrush one more time, aiming it at Luffy, who managed to dodge another symbol. The boy then asked her, "Are you sure, because you sure look like a child?" The girl felt herself become a little bit annoyed as she said, "Just because I'm a little bit undeveloped doesn't mean I'm a child." She then waved her brush at Luffy. Color trap. Yellow. The boy tried to jump out of the way, but the color hit him in the chest, causing him to begin to laugh out of the blue as he fell to the ground and hit it with a thud. This, however, caused the paint to be destroyed a little, which made him regain control of himself as he avoided a wave of wax from Mr. 3. The man then came forward smiling. "Did you know that Ms. Goldenweek trained so hard in her painting art that now she can force certain emotions with her paint?" The boy frowned. "This was going to be trickier than I thought." The boy quickly charged forward to Ms. Goldenweek to take her out of the picture, but Mr. 3 put on a wax wall as he said, "Didn't take for a brute, Straw Hat? Attacking a little girl. No shame at all." The scuffle between Luffy and the three couple continued for a little while till a sound from the bushes emerged. All three fighters looked and saw the princess on her duck. The girl looked at the three and gasped as she saw Mr. 3, who said, "Well, if it isn't the princess deciding to join us in this little party of ours." The man then tried to trap her in wax, but Luffy from the start of the fight between them managed to land a hit on him, punching him away from Vivi. "Luffy, thank you for saving me." The boy nodded his head and turned back to his opponents. "Vivi, go look for Sanji or Zoro. Tell them to come here immediately." The girl wanted to protest, but seeing that in theory, she wasn't much of a fighter, she nodded her head. The girl went off as the fight between the three continued. The girl wondered where she could find one of the men as she heard a roar behind her. The girl's eyes widened as she saw a dinosaur looking at her like she was its next meal. Galu also saw this and quickly sped away, quacking in fear with the hungry reptile on its tail. While everyone else was fighting for their lives, Sanji was casually strolling through the forest, dragging a huge T-Rex he hunted behind him. The man kept walking on till he saw something intriguing inside the dense jungle. It was a house made out of candle of all things. The man shrugged as he walked up to the house and entered it. He looked around and saw that the inside of the house was nothing out of the ordinary. He walked for a bit and looked around for a little bit more before he heard buzzing coming from somewhere. He looked around till he found a small box with a transponder snail on it. Naturally, he shrugged and opened the line. "Hello, this is the shitty restaurant. How can I help you?" The voice on the other side of the line didn't seem amused as he said, "Shitty restaurant? What are you saying, Mr. 3? Are you making fun of me?" Sanji raised his eyebrow, wondering why called him Mr. 3. The man finally remembered what Vivi had told them and assumed the role of Mr. 3. "Sorry, sir. I just wanted to joke a little." The voice replied, "Well, don't. I don't have time for jokes. Did you do as I told you? Did you take out the princess and the pirates that she went along with? Did you finish off the 5 couple for failing to do their mission? Did you manage to get the Ohara girl alive?" Sanji smiled. "Of course. The 5 couple are already out of the picture. The pirates are all dead, and the Ohara girl is currently in sleeping after I knocked her." The entire house suddenly shook with a thunderous boom. The man on the other side of the line asked, "What in the world was that? Didn't you say you finished the job? Is that one of the Straw Hats?" Sanji shook his head. "No, boss. This isn't one of the Straw Hats. I bet this is one of the dinosaurs that roam around the forest." The man on the other side of the line hummed a look and saw Vivi enter the house and ushered her to be quiet. The girl nodded as Galu walked inside and Vivi kept it quiet. The voice on the other line then said, "All right, good work Mr. 3 for taking care of the orders that I gave." Sanji then replied, "All right, boss man. Do you want something else that I need to care of?" The voice on the other line grumbled a little, "You acting weird today, Mr. 3. Remember that you're talking to your boss, and you need to watch your tone." The man waited for a moment saying, "As for anything else, I need you to come back to Alabasta with the Ohara girl. I already gave an emerald compass to the country. See you in a couple of days." The line then went off as Sanji said, "Well, that went better than I expected it to be." The man looked at Vivi, who smiled a little before remembering why she came here. The girl then began to tell him what happened and Sanji sighed a little as he said, "Man, those people don't know what to do without me." He walked outside the room and told Vivi, "Come on, let's go save Luffy's butt, and I'll be the Princess Shining Robin Schwan and Nami Swan," he said as he turned into his noodle dance form. Vivi only sighed as she walked behind him with Galu walking behind her. Back with Robin, the girl jumped to the side as she avoided another strike from Ms. Valentine. Defeating the weight weapon was a tricky subject, since the moment she spawned the arms, the woman would increase her weight and smash herself to the ground, forcing Robin to cancel her arms so they won't be smashed, given that any damage that happens to any phantom limbs of hers, she can feel it. Ms. Valentine smirked at the girl. "Where's that cocky attitude? I thought that you were going to beat me. Don't tell me that you're having a hard time?" Robin smiled. "Don't worry, I'm still going to beat you." The girl crossed her arms. Beginning with this, the girl formed arms in front of Ms. Valentine's face and said, "Suis fleur. Slap." The arms began to slap the woman senseless as she flailed around. The woman looked at her with an angry look. The woman spat out some saliva. "The boss said that he wanted you alive. He never said anything about you being able to walk or use those hands of yours." The woman then jumped to the sky and dropped herself down to Robin, saying, "10k guillotine." Robin quickly scrambled to the side and avoided the hit, but the aftershock caused her to fall and scrap her arms against the ground. The woman quickly jumped back on her feet and made a couple of eyes to make sure that she isn't caught by surprise. The girl felt that something moving, so she made a huge net of arms only for Ms. Valentine to strike the net and wait against it. Robin gritted her teeth as she felt her arms being stretched. She was sure that she was going to feel that tomorrow. The girl quickly took a deep breath and maneuvered the arm net around Ms. Valentine and smashed her against the ground as she let out a whimper of pain that shot through her arms. Ms. Valentine wasn't any better, as the weight woman was sure that she had now had a concussion due to being smashed head first against the ground. She looked at Robin, who had her arms bruised a little from the fight, and said, "Don't tell me that you reached your limit already? I can still go on for days." Robin replied by forming two arms and began punching the woman in the face and the gut. She then formed another arm and pulled Ms. Valentine's hair before she formed a chain of arms grabbing her face and smashing her face to the ground. The girl smirked. "Tell me, can you still go on for days? I think I might have shaved a couple of days off your time limit." Ms. Valentine jumped in the air as she said, "You're going to have it. I'm going to use my most destructive move yet. 100k dive." The woman expected Robin to use her hands to twist her, but this time she formed an arm from her abdomen and twisted her arm that held her umbrella, which she used to navigate where fell. Once the umbrella was gone, the woman couldn't navigate as another chain of arms formed, grabbing her by the face and redirecting how she was falling. The woman finally smashed headfirst into the ground. Robin grabbed the umbrella that fell beside her and destroyed it in pieces. She looked at Ms. Valentine that stood wheezing for her breath. The woman snarled at her as she ran toward Robin, but was stopped by dozens of arms forming all over her body. The black-haired girl walked up to the blonde woman and smirked as she said, "Consider this as punishment for trying to harm my friends." Robin walked away from her toward where the giants were fighting and snapped her fingers. The girl wouldn't admit it, but she liked the sound of the woman snapping bones. It was a small retribution for the trouble that they caused for her, Luffy, Vivi, and the girl's country. She noticed the lack of fighting in the giants' area, so she ran there hoping for the best. Usopp was afraid for multiple reasons. First, he was inside a man-eating monster-infested forest. The second, he was being followed by a deadly organization. The third, an assassin with explosion power was throwing explosive snot in his direction. And the most important reason, he was scared out of his mind. The boy ducked behind a tree for the umpteenth time as another blast went off with Mr. 5 coming out of the smoke as he said, "Come out, kid. Make this easier for both of us. I promise you that I will make your death as painless as possible." Usopp, although trembling, yelled, "I will make you pay for interfering with Master Bragi's fight." He then turned around and shot a pellet against the man, which exploded on him, only for the man to come out of the smoke unharmed with his arms crossed. The man said, "I know I shouldn't be telling you this, but if it didn't work the first time, it won't this time around." Mr. 5 then brought out a gun from his pocket as he explained, "This gun will end this fight." The man breathed into the gun, aiming it at Usopp. The boy then muttered to himself, "What is he going to do with this gun?" The man then pressed the trigger as a huge explosion enveloped Usopp. The boy stumbled out of the blast as smoke was exiting from his mouth. He stumbled a bit before remembering his master's fight and steadying himself with Mr. 5 talking. "You already knew that my devil fruit makes me an explosion human, and that means every single part of me can make explosions, even my own breath." Usopp replied, "Doesn't make a difference since I'm still going to beat you. I'm not walking away from this fight." Usopp then raised his slingshot and shot a pellet, special attack. Smoke bomb. Smoke filled the area as Mr. 5 heard running. The man snarled in anger as he ran after the bomb, reloading more rounds in the gun as he shot them at Usopp, who ducked and jumped away. The boy then turned around and threw something at him. The man grabbed it and it was a bottle of some strange kit of liquid. The boy smirked as he sent a pellet toward the bottle, causing it to explode, soaking the man with it. The boy hoped that with the liquid, the gun would be jammed and he won't be able to fire at him anymore. Usopp turned around and smirked, saying, "Try shooting at me now." The man replied by lifting the gun and exploding the tree. The boy turned pale and Mr. 5 told him it only counts if the liquid is sticky or if there were actual rounds. Usopp resumed running since this plan was out of the equation. He ran as fast as he can, hoping that he finds a way to take Mr. 5 out. The boy has then shot an explosive bullet to the back and he was thrown to the ground as he was heavily smoked. The man approached him and said, "Any last words?" The boy mumbled something and Mr. 5 said, "What, speak up, I can hear you. Don't tell me that you're too afraid now." The boy mumbled something again as Mr. 5 turned him around as Usopp yelled, shooting him with his slingshot. Special bullet. Pepper Star. The special ammunition struck the man in his nose, causing him to begin sneezing uncontrollably. Usopp then said, "You're going out," his hammer, and began hitting him with it as Mr. 5 punched him away, causing an explosion and sending the boy flying away. The man stood up as he continued sneezing, "I'm gonna, achoo, kill, achoo, you, achoo." The boy then wiped some blood falling from his mouth as he said, "End of the line." He took out another special pellet. Special bullet. Chili Star. The new pellet hit Mr. 5 in the face as the man screamed in pain from the sudden attack. Usopp then jumped on him and began whacking again with the hammer. The boy jumped away as Mr. 5 tried to punch him with another explosion, and then Usopp finished him with another special pellet, special bullet, Flaming Star. The man was now engulfed in flames as he ran around and smashed into a tree. The man finally passed out with Usopp pouring over him some water he had and walked toward where the giants were supposed to be fighting. He hoped that Luffy managed to beat the other members of the organization. He walked up to the place where he found Robin with Sanji and Vivi just looking at something. Usopp looked and said, "Oh dear, how did this happen?" The boy looked at the scene in front of him. Both of the giants were kneeling with their hands stuck to the ground. In the middle of the open area, there was a giant structure that was like a giant candlestick letting out candle particles, freezing the giants. In the structure, there was a level where Nami and Zoro were stuck and about to be frozen alive or turned into candles. And to add all to that, Luffy was sitting cross-legged happily drinking tea with a small girl, while a man was bragging about how he caught 3 great bounties and how his boss will be happy with him. Robin shook her head. "The better question is how to beat this." Sanji then asked, "Better yet, how did this happen to begin with? And who are those two, to begin with? We can't win if we don't know anything about them." After Luffy sent Vivi away, Mr. 3 stood up angry and yelled, "How dare you punch me? You will pay for this straw hat with your life." The rubber boy mocked him, "Oh please, you can't do anything." The boy ran to quickly punch him but suddenly felt an unexplainable clam go over him. When he saved Vivi, he completely let his guard down, which gave Ms. Goldenweek a chance to ambush him. The boy then sat on the ground with a clam expression as the girl said, "I think the giants finished fighting. Go and deal with them, Mr. 3. The man quickly moved toward the giants who were crouched on the ground panting after the fight they had. The man smiled as the giants have tired themselves off, making this much easier for him. Broggy looked at Dory. "Now, let's go and find those who tried to sabotage our fight." The giant suddenly felt something crawling all over his body. He looked down only to see a man walking up to them with 2 spherical balls with him. The man spoke, "No need to look any further. I was the one who interfered and now you're both going to be my masterpieces after I hand you over to the Navy." Dory struggled to free himself, but with both his hands and legs stuck, he couldn't do much. He looked at Broggy, who was also struggling. "You'll pay for this," he said to Mr. 3. The man smirked as he began working on something huge. "I doubt that. By the end of the day, you'll be handed over to the Navy with Straw Hat." He pointed to Luffy, who was drinking tea with Ms. Goldenweek. Dory yelled, "What did you do to the little human?" Mr. 3 replied, "Nothing much, but I just tamed him a little bit. He was rowdy, so I had him relax." Once the tower structure was finished, Mr. 3 sent the 2 wax balls to the top and sank them into the wax. From them, Zoro and Nami appeared. Zoro then yelled, "Who the heck are you? And what do you think you're doing?" He looked and saw Luffy sitting down there and sighed. "I won't even ask what happened to him." The Candleman explained, "Well, as you see, you're both trapped, and in a short amount of time, you'll be nothing but candlesticks. I'll be killing you because you learned the boss's secret." Nami then yelled, "No please, I'm too young to die. I haven't even collected many treasures." Zoro looked at her and frowned. "Is that what are you thinking about right now? Did it ever cross your mind that we're going to die at this moment?" The woman shrugged as Zoro sighed. "I think I should have stayed on the post back in Shell's town." The man tried to wiggle his way out of the wax, even tried to cut his own feet, but nothing worked, so at least he made a decision. He took a pose. The man then said, "Well, if I'm going to become a statue, I might as well become one on my terms." Nami could only look at him in disbelief. Nami then said, "I'm sure the others will save us." She then looked at Luffy and yelled, "Do something, you idiot." When Luffy didn't reply, she moaned in sadness, "We're doomed." Back with the others, Usopp looked at the situation and smacked a fist into his hand as he said, "Look, I have a plan, but first I need you all to free Luffy."